It's the second day of the working week, Tuesday morning. Welcome to your favorite morning program. This is the AM show. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. As always, we're going to start off with the news review. And this morning, our guest is the former president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Roland Arthur-Money. He's going to be the man who's going to help us to digest all the big stories on the train of public discourse. Now, government has extended its deadline for the domestic debt exchange program to the end of the month. Now, this is according to the state, is to help deepen stakeholder engagement on the proposed policy. But the minority in parliament has called for a complete suspension of the entire program. We'll be discussing this particular subject matter with private legal practitioner Martin Kwebu. Also adding to the discourse will be Joe Jackson, who is the Director of Strategy and Business Operation at Delex Finance. Also, Theo Echampon, a financial analyst, will be sharing his thoughts on this very trending issue as well. Also on the show this morning, we'll be engaging government spokesperson on governance and security. And that's simply because there are a lot of issues to discuss. Is a reshuffle imminent? Well, this is a question that many of you are asking because already two substantive ministers have resigned. And how is government shaping up after that particular development? Palgrave Boachidankwa is our go-to man on that particular subject matter. And then we also delve into our latest investigation, Ghana's School of Shame. Our checks reveal that 34,290 children in the Northeast region do not have furniture to study. Yes, that's how huge the number is. And that's a figure from the Ghana Education Service. Reverend Isaac Owusu is the president of the Ghana National Association of Teachers. He's going to share his thoughts on that rather worrying development. Also, the spokesperson of the Education Ministry, Kwesi Kwatin, will join us for that conversation as well. Dr. Peter Pateanti is the executive director for the Institute of Education Studies. He will be adding his submissions on that matter. Later on the show, as always, we'll give you the chance to join in with your thoughts on all the issues that we have discussed via social media as well as through our calls. And so that is basically the itinerary for this morning. We're taking a breather. When we come back, the news is next. Don't go anywhere. It's now time to serve you the news. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. Now let's start off in Parliament, where the minority says that it would embark on a nationwide roadshow to ensure that bondholders reject government's debt exchange program. Addressing the media, minority leader Haruna Idrisu said that the program in its current form poses serious risk to individual bondholders, the banking sector, as well as the entirety of the economy. He's therefore calling for broader consultation.
The minority in parliament continues to blame what it refers to the government's recklessness and irresponsible borrowing for Ghana's current economic woes, which has resulted in the ongoing debt exchange program. Addressing the media, minority leader Haruna Idrisu said government rejected a series of suggestions to cut expenditure, but rather chose to borrow excessively. He attributed the refusal of individual bondholders to sign onto the debt exchange program to the lack of engagement.
The failure of the Nana-Addo-Bawumia government to fully engage the relevant stakeholders on the debt exchange program has led us to total confusion, rejection, disapproval of the initiative.
The minority believes the debt exchange program in its current form could lead to a collapse of the economy. They are therefore calling for a broader consultation on the way forward.
So in view of this, we in the minority call on government to immediately suspend the domestic debt exchange program and engage more comprehensively in consulting stakeholders and the Ghanaian people. We call on all stakeholders that probably they can consider a national economic dialogue on the state of the economy and in particular, the domestic exchange initiative or program. How do we work it? Probably the consultation and council will guide us as a country how to walk out of this imminent economic crisis.
Failure to do so, the minority says they will embark on a massive roadshow across the country to ensure bondholders reject the program.
We will embark on a nationwide roadshow to foster deeper understanding of what they are doing. So very soon, we'll deploy our teams into the region to appreciate the level of the economic crisis and their inability to manage it.
Meanwhile, government has for the third time extended the deadline for individuals to sign onto the debt exchange program. James Kwesi Aveji's report read to you.
Turning our attention away from Parliament, occupants of the Apromasi Police Barracks had to be evacuated after a fire incident killed a police officer, his family, and destroyed several properties as well. Inspector General of Police, Dr. Akakpo says that the exercise will pave way for a complete assessment of the facility and for thorough investigations to be conducted. The Ashanti region has recorded 3 major fire outbreaks in 3 days. Nanaya Ojima has more in the following report.
Inspector General of Police, accompanied by some members of the Police Management Board, took a trip to the barracks to ascertain the situation and commiserate with the officers. The visit was an emotional one for the team and victims. Dr. Dampare conveyed words of encouragement from the President and other top government officials.
When I heard the situation during around 1 to 2 a.m., I monitored throughout the night. And with engagement with my colleagues, we decided that whatever it takes, I have to be here personally within the earliest possible time. And whilst leaving Accra, I informed the sector minister. Mr. Vice President has also been accordingly informed. Mr. President is also informed. And Mr. President, through Mr. Vice President and the sector minister, asked me to convey his personal heartfelt condolences to first the families who have lost dear ones, and second to all of you who happen to be occupants of these flats for even the psychological trauma that you have to find yourself in. And thirdly, to the entire police body for we losing one of our own.
The fire gutted the top floor of one of 3-story buildings, housing about 45 police officers and their families. Investigations by the fire service have established the fire was started in the hall of the deceased family. Eyewitnesses say efforts of the deceased officer to break out of his room proved futile. Dr. Dampare believes for the safety of officers, they will have to be relocated for a thorough assessment on the buildings. He says the evacuation will be immediate and convenient for the victims.
All the other blocks not affected, we are going to have to evacuate all of you and give you a decent place nearby, whilst we leave this structure for a complete assessment by structural engineers, by electrical engineers, and all the other experts who can have a very comprehensive examination of the situation for us to know what needs to be done to improve safety within the flats.
Meanwhile, the service has committed to ensuring the welfare of all victims, ensuring clinical psychologists visit affected members. Dr. Dampare further assured them of financial support.
Life has to be lived with necessities. And those necessities, I know most of you have lost all of them. We'll work with Mr. President, with assurance he has given us, for us to see how quickly we can get things replaced, all the things we've lost as a result of the fire replaced, so that you come to some level of normalcy in your life.
Families of the deceased victims are also being engaged by the service for a dignified burial for the officer. COP Habiba Chumesi Sapon is Director General in charge of welfare at the Ghana Police Service.
Our brother and family, the administration will make sure that they are sent off in a very dignified manner. Because he died serving Mother Ghana. Rest assured that IG, the police administration, is behind you.
For JoyNews, Nanaya Ojima, Kumasi.
Very sad developments there. Now, away from that, 56 out of the 76 fishing vessels operating on Guinean waters have been grounded for non-compliance with the new illegal, unreported and unregulated fishing measures introduced by the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development. Ghana was shown a yellow card in 2021 by the European Union for non-compliance of fisheries laws. Speaking to JoyNews on the sidelines of the 14th session of the Conference of the Ministers of the Fisheries Committee for the West Central, Gulf of Guinea, in Accra, Fisheries and Aquaculture Development Minister Mavis Hawakumsin indicated that as part of measures, vessels with unauthorized fishing nets are also forbidden to fish on Guinean waters. Richard Odunakun has more on the following report.
Of the 76 fishing vessels operating in Ghana, only 19 of them have currently been cleared to fish on our waters. That's Fisheries Minister Mavis Hawakumsin. According to her, the ministry is more than ready to end all illegalities on our Ghanaian waters, hence their resolve to sanitize the space.
We have done a lot with the industrial vessels. We have now given them a new gear regime that's a very specific one that they should use for fishing. And because of that, when we were done with the close season in 2022, September, as we speak, only 19 vessels are on the sea fishing because the others could not, out of the 76, the others could not meet the requirements. Apart from the ministry giving these directives for the fishing gear, Ghana Maritime Authority has also directed that they should also refurbish their entire vessel. And so you do that before you come to Ghana Maritime Authority. Will give you certificates. Then you move to fisheries. For fisheries to also come and then inspect your fishing gear and other requirements. If you are okay, then we'll allow you to go. And so the 19 vessels were able to meet the requirements and they have gone for fishing. Apart from that, as we speak, Psycho is a thing of the past in this country, even though there were lots of people fighting it, but I stood on my grounds with the support from the presidency. We were able to stop the cycle.
Mavis Hawakumsin also assured that the ministry will do all it can to comply with internationally accepted sustainable fisheries practices. She was convinced that the European Union would withdraw the yellow card after the assessment.
As you rightly mentioned, in the football, when you are shown a yellow card, the next one is red card, which means you are going out. Ghana in 2012, 2013, when we were given the yellow card, it cost us a lot. And so when we heard about this one too, we were very, very much careful to make sure that we don't even move to the red card. As at last year, July, 29th June to 1st July, the EU visited us. To be very honest with you, by then I had not visited the harbour myself. And so when they came, it was in my absence. I was then in Lisbon for a conference, and there were some issues there. So they drew my attention, and I have taken, that was about the logbook. They were not recording their movements and activities in the logbook. Now they are doing everything. And so I have confidence that when the EU comes back, they will not hesitate to bring us back to the green card. Looking at what we have done, I believe by now they have all the information even before their arrival in Ghana. We've done a lot.
The minister announced that the ministry, along with its agencies and department, has started a new and rigorous inspection operation at the port to make sure that all fishing vessels operating in Ghanaian waters have the right kind of gear before being given permission to fish. Reporting for Joy News, Richard Kwejunyako, Accra.
Let's now get into the camp of the opposition National Democratic Congress, where Member of Parliament for Asawase Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak says that he's petitioned the party's Ashanti regional leadership and the Ghana Police Service of allegations made by the new chairman of the Asawase constituency, Faisal Dauda. Mr. Dauda, at a news conference, accused the MP of planning to get him killed. He also alleged that the minority chief whip is in bed with the governing New Patriotic Party and has been scheming for the NDC to lose the 2024 elections. But Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak says that he's petitioned the party hierarchy and the police to investigate and judge Mr. Dauda's conduct.
Muntaka should know if he's a man enough, he should face me directly.
Observers are worried about the seeming friction between the newly elected Asawase constituency NDC chairman Faisal Dauda and MP Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak. The latter held a press conference days ago accusing his MP of planning to have him killed and scheming to derail the party's fortunes in 2024.
Any of my child who may lose his life spiritually, mentally, physically, or any way, even by accident, I will take the matter seriously against Honorable Muntaka Alhaji Mutum, who has been the chairman and former MCE. Anything that happens to me by sickness, by spiritually, by whatever means, I will hold Honorable Muntaka responsible, including his family, immediate family. I will hold them responsible. Everybody should know my life is in danger. I'm a kind of person that I'm a fearless son. I'm not a faint-hearted person. I will move this constituency forward, either with Muntaka or any other person.
But the MP for Asawase, Alhaji Muntaka Mubarak, says the allegations are baseless.
They will never forgive us.
He has petitioned the party hierarchy and the police on the matter.
All I said was that if anybody decides to contest another person, because of what we've agreed, you cannot get my support. Nobody stopped you. So fortunately, you went and you won. I started the process of reconciliation. I met those who won. I met those who lost. Then I met them together and promised that we should do everything together. We did fateful Sunday that I heard there was some arrest, and then that started all this. We attended a wedding together and attended a funeral together. So I don't know where this is coming from. But like I said, I'm not going to respond to the issue because our party has a constitution. Our party has its rules. I listened to all the frivolous allegations I've reported to the party, to the region, and the criminal aspect of it, which is somebody planning to kill somebody. I mean, murder is not a joke in our country. I've since reported that to the police. I hope our party will take our constitution seriously, our rules, and because a lot of the things that happened was an anti-party behavior, and our party front on that.
Alhaji Muntaka wants a recent visit by national executive members to foster unity within the constituency and unite the NDC in the region. He was speaking with Love News when he presented financial support running into 300,000 cedis to 110 needy students in his constituency to pursue various courses at the tertiary level. Reporting for Joy News, Erastus Asaredonko, Kumasi.
Now, the high rate of female dropouts from junior and senior high schools in the Wa West district is an issue of concern to stakeholders of education within the district. Most of these girls drop out of school because they are forced to marry early. One community where the illegal practice is common is Wachiabo. Now, Rafik Salam reports how 22-year-old Louisa Doma has defied the odds to become the first female from the community to enter the university.
Wachiabo is an outlandish community located in the eastern corridor of the Wa West district. The scattered-built community has a population of almost 2,000. The mainstay of the people is agriculture, particularly the cultivation of cereals, leguminous crops, and rearing of animals. Among the myriad of challenges faced by the people of Wachiabo and its adjoining communities is education. Many children enroll at a basic school, but majority of them drop out of school before they complete the junior high school. The case is even worse for the girl child as they drop out in droves and forced into early marriage. There is, however, a case of one who has defied the odds and bent on changing the status quo.
Most ladies don't continue their education just because they don't have someone to support them. Some get pregnant because no one is providing for them. They have to give themselves for men to support them. But me, I said those things can bother me. Whichever genuine way I'll pass to further my education, I will.
Chanela Louisa Doma was born in the community some 22 years ago and had a basic school education here. She attained aggregate 10 in the basic education certificate examination and was offered admission at St. Louis Senior High School in the Asante region, a school that she admired at the time but has little knowledge about.
Because my aim is I want to explore. I want to go all over the region before I die. So after my BEC, I decided to travel outside the region and also see how life is. Because living in this village, and after that you go to SHS in this village and everything in this village, you won't know what's going on. And life is really different as compared to this place.
Louisa Doma has just got admission at the University of Mines and Technology, UMAT, to pursue environmental safety engineering. She is the torchbearer for female education for now in the community. The first female to go to university here passed on few years after her completion. The onus now lies on her to succeed.
My parents they are not well to do. They can't provide all my needs, but through the help of Honorable, he has been providing some of my needs for me, like my school fees, everything at all I need concerning school, he provides for me.
Warwas Member of Parliament, Superintendent retired Peter Lenchine Tubu, spotted a Wuchobo starlet during her basic school days and is ready to fund her education and some 3 others.
But I want her to be a star. I want her to be a star very particularly to the girl child. Where you were born cannot disadvantage you. Who you are and who you think you can be tomorrow should be an inspiration that will let you stand out in the world.
Her auntie, Abenato Agnes, is excited.
Her seniors couldn't make it, but she has done well. Girls' education is very important, but most girls are unable to climb the educational ladder due to obvious barriers. But Louisa has been exceptional. The MP has done well by contributing to her education. It's our hope that she will be able to complete successfully, so she can assist her siblings in the future.
Growing up in this predominant farming community, Doma Louisa has several of her colleagues who she said were more brilliant than her. She stated that now that she's been able to get herself out of the turbulent waters, she will prove a point to be a shining example for the community.
I will encourage all young girls to hold on to their education, no matter the troubles and what they are going through, either financially or mentally from their parents. They should still keep on trying. Even if they are not academically good, they should try to complete either SHS. From there they can get a petty job to do.
Reporting for JoyNews, Rafik Salam, Wuchobo.
25 ambassadors of the Ghana Science and Tech Explorer Challenge Prize, GSTEP, have successfully graduated over the last year. They have been equipped with skills that will help them to tackle problems in their respective communities. Joy Prime's Lois Adeyemi was at the pitching and graduation ceremony and has filed this report.
This is a water purifier.
One by one, they pitched their prototype projects to the judges. Their projects aim to tackle societal problems they have identified.
Utilize the heat produced from burning refuges to convert it into electricity.
Each ambassador has 90 seconds to convince the judges to invest in their projects.
I'm intrigued. I want to see what's going to happen next.
The prototypes address issues regarding sanitation, education, and pollution, just to name a few. Each ambassador has 90 seconds to convince the judges to invest in their projects.
It's solid. It's solid. Something that could easily work.
The 25 ambassadors have, over a one-year period, received mentoring under the Ghana Science and Tech Explorer Challenge Prize. The initiative, championed by the Dream Oval Foundation, is targeted at equipping junior high school pupils with practical science, technology, engineering, and math skills. Izzy Obing is the CEO of Foundervine, one of the GSTEP Challenge partners. She's excited about the prospects of the initiative.
We're trying to prepare them for the workplace of tomorrow. We want to prepare them for business, for politics, for engineering, maths. And so across the 12 months, they've been doing public speaking. They've been really refining their presentation skills. They've been working in projects, and they've been also building the innovations that they presented today.
One of the judges and youth development coach, Kwame Nyantwame, believes the creation of a conducive environment is key to unearthing the potential of the young ones.
Ghana absolutely has a future. We just need to pay attention to the sort of environments that we create for our children. Education is the catalyst for change. The sort of education that we give to children is what is going to make them.
At the end of the pitching exercise, 14-year-old Fosuhene Apinting came out on top with his educational mobile app.
The problem I identified in my society is that in my neighborhood in Kumasi, Afasiabon, majority of kids or teens there do not spend their leisure time much productively. So I decided to make this app to help them to learn.
Parents should be very close to their wards, and we should know what they like or what they are passionate about.
Jeremiah Ekpe and Ivana Kwame took second and third places, respectively. Stephen Abuaje was also acknowledged. Lois Adeyemi's report for Joy Prime.
Meanwhile, the GSTEP exhibition and award ceremony is slated for January 25 this year at the Accra International Conference Center. And that's how come we wrap up on this morning's edition of the news. For more, log on to www.myjoyonline.com. My name is Pakwesi Shandoff. Tuesday.
Thank you for staying with us. You're still live on the AM show. Time now for us to dig into the papers and let you know the latest that they have to share. Well, joining us this morning, we have former president of the Ghana Journalists Association, Afeo Money. He is our guest. He'll be joining us shortly. But a plethora of issues to discuss this morning on the show, from Okudzeto Ablakwa's petition to Shraj on Reverend Kusi Boateng. And of course, we can also talk about the domestic debt exchange program. Things are heating up, but how will this end, even as government has pushed forward the deadline to the end of January? Well, let's get into the papers now. The Daily Graphic to start off matters. Utility tariffs up February the 1st, 29.96% for electricity and 8.3% for water. And if I'm not mistaken, fuel prices have also gone up just by a notch, because I think some 50 pesos have been added on to petrol, at least. And I know diesel is hovering around 15 cedis. But let's stick with the utility tariffs. As the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission, the PURC, has announced an upward review of electricity and water tariffs for the first quarter of this year. The new tariffs, which take effect on February the 1st, 2023, will push electricity up by 29.96% across the board for all customers, while water will increase by 8.3%. The Commission, however, approved varying rate adjustments, including some reductions for selected industrial and commercial consumers as part of the ongoing restructuring of the existing water rate structure. A statement issued yesterday and signed by the Executive Secretary of the PURC, Dr. Ishmael Aka, said the new tariff review was occasioned by exchange rate volatility, rising inflation, generation mix, and weighted average cost of natural gas. This is the second time in 6 months that tariffs have been reviewed. Second time in 6 months. On September the 1st, 2022, the Commission approved a 27.15% increment in electricity and 21.55% increment in water. It was under a major tariff adjustment for the period. So we'd like to find out from you this morning, on the back of these latest increments as far as electricity and water are concerned, and looking at the economic dynamics, what do you see? Is it going to impact your pocket that much? Impact it will, but will it impact your pocket that much? And maybe I'd like to hear from industry players as well, because this also works for them. Those who are in industry are going to have to pay a little less than those who are using electricity non-commercially. How will it play out? If you have any thoughts, shoot them to us with the hashtag AM Show via our live stream. So that's the latest as far as utility tariffs are concerned. But let's take a look at this one. On our roads, danger ahead. I would wish that we can zoom in on that photo that you see right behind me. Danger looms as this metal frame holding the traffic lights is tilted perilously towards the direction of the pedestrian crossing and is likely to fall off if it is not attended to immediately. Now, this is simply danger in the waiting, as the whole structure located close to the Galilea Market in the South municipality of the Greater Accra region near Kaswa on the Accra Cape Coast Road could tumble down at any time. Also worrying is the fact that some of the lights are either displaced or not functioning, resulting in pedestrians often competing with vehicles to use that spot of the road, which makes it even more difficult and risky for pedestrians to cross the dual carriage highway. For any functional city, traffic lights are installed to, among others, increase the traffic handling capacity of an intersection to improve the safety and efficiency of both pedestrian and vehicular traffic. Indeed, they are also mounted at strategic locations to regulate the flow of vehicular traffic to protect lives of pedestrians and other road users. But of course, we can see that in this instance, things have gone awry, things have gone askew, and if something is not done soon, it will be another instance of waiting for disaster to strike, waiting for the unfortunate to happen. I wonder, though, how many people in government, people who maybe even work with the National Road Safety Authority, the MTTD, among others. It is unimaginable. I cannot conceive that none of them would have seen this, because this is not something that just happened. It boggles my mind sometimes. You would see people, just go by, people in authority, see the stuff and let go of it until something happens. Until something happens. The stretchers I've been using recently, I noticed that in some pockets of our, what are they even called? Right by the roadside, those paved areas, there are some pockets of grass, some of them with electricity poles and all of that. And people have been burning stuff. So you would see some of these places, there's fire and all of that. I wonder what is going on and whether no one has noticed that these activities are happening, and should any of these electric poles or pylons, whatever you want to call them, catch fire, then it is a major disaster. Then we have to dig into the public purse, into our kitty, and fork out money we don't even have. Anyway, so at least, even if the authorities had not seen them, now we have seen them, and it's time for action to prevent any disastrous end, because this definitely is not a good thing. And if it collapses, we hope not, but if it does, it means it's also going to create some sort of blockade of the road. It may have to be moved, and it's connected to electricity and all of that. Just a sad scenario. But let's move on from there. 41,000 tons of gold for oil fuel land. So 41,000 ton gold for oil fuel land. Let's get to that story on page 16 of the Daily Graphic, and then we'll take some other stories. Let's quickly get there. So page 16 of the Daily Graphic newspaper. So the government has taken delivery of the first consignment of petroleum products under its commodity swap arrangement. The country received 41,000 tons of the petroleum products delivered aboard the vessel SCF Yenisei. Multiple sources familiar with the transaction told the Daily Graphic that the products arrived at the Tema port last Sunday and discharged into the Bulk Oil Storage and Transportation Company storage tanks. The National Strategic Petroleum Company, BOST, will market the product to bulk oil distribution companies, that is the BDCs. valued at $40 million. The deal was brokered by the economic management team led by Vice President Mahamudu Bawumia. The gold for oil policy of the government is expected to stem the depreciation of the cedi against major currencies. Is it working though? Is it? We already see that the hard currencies, the euro, the pound, the dollar, are gaining ground again against our currency. And that is becoming a bit of a worry. I also look at the disparities when you go, especially to the banks and other areas to transact. I'm not talking about the black market. So you go there and maybe you are getting the dollar for maybe 9 or 10 cedis, thereabouts, if you're selling it. But if you're buying at an exorbitant rate, over 2 cedis more that you have to cough up sometimes. And that is a bit of a worry. I don't know what exactly is going on in that respect. But we are also told, according to the Public Accounts Committee, appearing before the PIAC yesterday, the Bank of Ghana expressed optimism about the sustainability of the current gold for oil program between Ghana and Dubai. It said gold production had picked up, and so it could buy enough gold to sustain the program. I'm looking at the Dubai end, though, and I'm putting this out there, and definitely whatever shows that smoke, like they say, there is no smoke without fire. The smoke is out now. Let's see whether the fire will show, because people in industry, someone who has worked with Tullow and Shell, for example, has whispered certain things to some of us, and it's interesting. I'm just putting it out there. Did we get the oil from Dubai in the United Arab Emirates? Is that the source of our oil? Or is it being whitewashed? Where did our oil come from? Dubai? Well, very soon I'm sure we'll get some details on that scoop. But that is the latest. We have the delivery of 41,000 tons gold for oil, fuel, land. So those 2 stories done so far. Let me welcome aboard Afil Mone, former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Mr. Mone, a very good morning to you, sir. Mr. Mone, if you can hear me, good morning to you.
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
I hope you're well, sir.
Yes, by His grace, the grace abounds.
We thank the Lord. Let's start the conversation from the issue of journalists. And when you go to Sudan, I don't know whether it's South Sudan, Salva Kiir, we know of the situation there where the president, these are health issues. I'm sure you followed that story. I'm only bringing it up because of the issue of journalism. Yes. And even this morning, it was on the BBC, how he, health-wise, let me put it in a mild way, wet himself in public. It was unfortunately captured, and some journalists have been apprehended, about 6 of them. What is your quick take on that vis-a-vis our own country? I spoke to a prominent person in the country yesterday, an elderly figure, and he said to me, look, Ben, you look at all what is going on and the muzzling, and you say anything against the administration and sometimes the consequences, and even citing the bit about the Chiana 8, the students, and why things took the turn that they did. Are we getting muzzled? Is the system so stifling for media people and the generality of the population? Is there any nexus? What do you think about journalism in Africa, in Ghana, in South Sudan? What progress should we be making?
Starting from Ghana, we are touted as a reference point, a standard measure for the rest of Africa.
Right.
If a democracy is striking course of administration, national and international, is because the media brought it this far. It is rooted in theory and ingrained in practice that democracy is impossible without the media. So if a democracy is glittering, doesn't mean we don't have challenges. The credit should go to the media. Politicians are politicians, so they misbehave at the least opportunity or try to take undue advantage of each other. So the media over the years have been as scrutinous as ever. If we are deepening the boss culture of our media, and if corruption is under check, even though we can't say that corruption has been done away with entirely.
Right.
The media are the most effective institution, weapons to fight corruption, and we can cite copious examples where we have succeeded in unraveling corruption in high places. So, kudos to the media. Doesn't mean we don't have challenges. The challenges are enormous. The challenges, in terms of how certain state authorities will relate to the media. But this does not obscure the fact that we have the latitude to speak our mind, latitude to give all sides to issues, latitude to hold to account people in positions of authority and power. And so here we are, and we believe that we are praying that the next World Press Freedom Index will be kind to us. We've been sleeping, and the
you say you're praying that it will be kind to us, but it will only be kind to us based on the actions we take and the inactions in areas where it does not contravene international best practices, right?
Certainly, yes. But if you take a microscopic look at the media scene, our performance last year against the previous year, I think, was better than the previous year.
Right.
So we are inclined to believe that we'll gain some steps, because the fall has been so precipitous from 3rd to 10th in Africa, and from 27 to a 60th position. So we are expecting vertiginous rise as far as the Red Press Freedom Index is concerned.
Right, and those are the expectations, lofty expectations that you have in that regard. But in terms of what you've seen, in terms of action, have you seen, consider, for example, and it is brought to the fore often, Ahmed Hussein Swale. His death has still not been, there's no conclusivity to what exactly happened. There's still injustice, so to speak. How does that rub off on our record as a country when it comes to journalism, the safety of journalists? And it is crucial. I think sometimes it is even reflected by the people around you. Mr. Afilmoni, so I go around all the time, and guess what? At church, when I go to certain places, offices, when I go around many places I go to, one of the things people, maybe 75, 80% of the time ask me is, do you feel safe? Yesterday, the person I say I was interacting with was asking me, do you feel threatened? And yes, we get messages, we get these things from time to time, but it's interesting that even people would be so curious, wondering about journalists and whether they are safe. And that was not the case before. So that in itself is a testament. What does that do to the fight to ensure that we have the right, or we have that same space to express what must be expressed?
We do understand that this is a risk-prone profession. But we also always bear in mind that journalism is not for the lily-livered. Journalism is not a profession for the chicken-hearted. Journalism is for people like you, so strong, courageous, brave, to expose dark spots in society, hold to account people in authority, and to be the voice of the voiceless. And so the questions about how you feel is so legitimate, because we have instances where people are tortured mentally, people have suffered in the line of duty. And you mentioned the case of Ahmed Swale. It remains a scar on our conscience as a nation. His Excellency the President made an emphatic statement about 3 years ago that the killers of Ahmed Swale would be apprehended. Before then, the police authorities had told us that 7 people had been arrested and they were close to putting them on trial. And since then, nothing had happened. And so international organizations are still not happy, but they're asking questions why Ghana, which is so credited for being a beacon of press freedom, will have this case so unresolved. And as recent as last month, the president, in his interaction with the media at the Ghana International President, also said the issue will be resolved. But still, there are lingering doubts about the ability of the authorities to put this to a closure. 2 years ago, we met the IGP, Dr. George Akakpo, who is an honorary member of the GJ, and he indicated that a special unit had been created to help resolve some of these issues which had been lingering. And again, as we speak, nothing has come out of that special unit. So it reinforces the need for the media to heighten their follow-up instinct, follow up with the police authorities, what has come out of that special unit, which is supposed to resolve some of these unresolved issues. So once again, I'll appeal to our colleagues. As I said, this is a risk-prone profession, but we have been called. Journalism is a calling. Once you have been called, you disregard the risk involved in this profession and go all out there and give of your best. So to our colleagues with multimedia, despite group, whatever you are, please, we need you more than ever before. At a time when the circumstances are dire, when economically we are on the ropes, when a cost of living crisis is vitally bitter, when corruption is still an issue, we still don't have a long way to go in fighting corruption. And as I said, this fight can only be won if the media scale up the fight against graft in low and high places.
Right. And that's a very important point you make. Let's wrap with the Daily Graphic. There are two stories that we've not got to digest, which I brought up. The first has to do with utility tariffs up from February the 1st. Electricity is up by 29.96%, water by 8.3%. And there's also 41,000 ton gold for oil fuel lands. And that is in the Daily Graphic newspaper. These will be supplied to the BDCs, the bulk distribution companies. But maybe you could share your quick thoughts on those. And then finally, we'll wrap with Okudzeto Ablakwa's petition to Shraj to investigate Reverend Kusi Boateng. So maybe your two quick thoughts on utility tariff adjustments, upward second time in 6 months, and the gold for oil fuel landing.
In announcing the deal with utility tariffs, the PRC did admit that the circumstances are not the best. We are feeling the pinch. We are feeling the economic squeeze because of living crisis. No one is immune from all these crises. But at the same time, the explanation is that the upward tariff adjustment is to avoid a catastrophic situation, which will consign it back to the doomsday days. And
they talk about utility, so they talk about fluctuations of the currency, among others, and those are fair points to make.
These are fair, but at the same time, we need to square this against their services. Our consumers having value for money, the question is a big no. Where are state and identical commandos? Light off is a daily occurrence, and many are consumers who are dissatisfied with the services of the Electricity Corporation of Ghana. So if this tariff adjustment will bring about a qualitative improvement in their services, so be it. And that's our prayer. Otherwise, we should hold them to account to justify why this adjustment at this time, when the cost of living crisis is taking a bite at everybody. On what time they are electricity and water providers are cousins. I believe they all belong to the electricity family. And again, we expect nothing but qualitative improvement in the services of electricity, Ghana Water Company. Again, we'll urge the media, please do not stop. In the name of comprehensive journalism, once these tariffs are announced, put your spotlight on the two institutions, two companies, and to ensure that we see tangible improvement in their services. Otherwise, we will hold them to account, as well as those who caved in to approve the tariff adjustment.
Right.
On vote for oil, and we applaud the Vice President and his office for demonstrating an innovative spark to cushion the burden of petroleum consumers. But there are questions which have been asked whether this will balloon our debt situation. An example is cited of the hydro-Sino agreement, which has ended up...
That's the Sino-Hydro agreement, actually.
Sino-Hydro agreement, which has ended up swelling our debt profile. So again, we expect, and especially our financial and economic journalists, to sharpen the focus in these areas. Politicians are politicians. They will peddle amid the chaotic pile of blatant spin, utter lies, half-truths, and propaganda by all sides. Politicians will take advantage, especially those on the opposing side, will take advantage of the current situation to score as many political points as possible. Right. The government will also try to justify its position. So this is the time for independent journalism to be in its fullest glow, so that Ghanaians will make informed decisions about what is happening in this country.
Right. Let's take a quick look. Of course, MPP and DC reconcile members ahead of 2024 elections. Both parties are engaging in that activity to reconcile those that contested in their internal elections. We saw recently major shifts in the NPP, for example, new party chairman Stephen Ayensu in team. We also had John Wedu losing out to Justin Kodria Frimpong. And in the NDC end, we also had Sami Foto moving out for former General Secretary Johnson Esiru Nketia to step in. And then with the open slot, we also had Fifi Thiavi Kwete coming in there. So both sides are reconciling ahead of 2024 elections. But what I want you to focus on briefly, Okudjato Ablakwa petitions Shraj to investigate Reverend Kusi Boateng. And the Member of Parliament for Norton has petitioned the Commission on Human Rights and Administrative Justice to investigate the Secretary of the National Cathedral Board of Trustees, Reverend Victor Kusi Boateng, over conflict of interest, what he terms in his letter, odious conflict of interest, including possession of multiple identities and other alleged criminal dealings. The petition, which was received by the two deputy commissioners of Shraj yesterday, also alleged that there was a transfer of 2.6 million Ghana cedis cash from the National Cathedral Secretariat to JNS Talent Center Limited, owned by Reverend Kusi Boateng, under his secondary identity, Kwabena Edu Jemfi. Quick reflections on this, especially as we've all been talking about the National Cathedral project and whether, in fact, yesterday, I had here in the studio with me former General Secretary of the MPP, Nana Oheninto, and I put the question to him about the National Cathedral, and he said, look, under the circumstances, we shouldn't be pursuing it as of now. What do you make of it?
I know Nana Oheninto is a believer and a politician as well. And the Bible, which is a perennial spring of wisdom and infallible guide of conduct, enjoys Christians to let their light shine at all times so people give credit to their maker. And it said that if gold rusts, what will iron do? But I'm hesitant to draw any conclusion on the Okudjato expose. So it calls for thorough investigation for the truth to come out. Because it's Natural Cathedral, with all the controversies, should not be found in this kind of murky situation. Already we are yet to come to a conclusion or come to a consensus, reach a consensus on whether we should proceed with this project or, in view of our present economic circumstances, to put it on hold. And for this alleged scandal to emerge at this time, we'll put a serious dent on the whole project. So what we need to do now is to put pressure on Shraj to come up with its findings as early as possible, in order to put to rest all the lingering questions about corruption at the National Cathedral Secretariat.
Right. And of course, especially as we're talking about a facility that will honor God with all the corruption that is miring, the situation, it creates quite I don't know how to put it, but it raises quite a stir, a situation when it comes to that. I don't know what your take is, but I've never been for it. I feel, especially in our economic situation, and I always go back to the point that other countries, the French, the Americans, used centuries, in some cases, to put up their cathedrals, and we want to put it up in a short while, and even the entire mindset behind it. I am very Christian, very Catholic, but I don't know. And in our economic situation, still wanting to push it. But anyway, it is what it is.
Even among the Christian community, opinion is so divided. And
right.
The division is so sharp. And as I said, this will, the alleged expose or corruption, acts of corruption, will draw people's attention more in a negative manner. And the cathedral project will be trending in the wrong direction. And this is something we need to avoid at all costs.
Let's quickly do these two stories, one from the Ghanaian Times newspaper and the other from the Daily Guide newspaper. But let me just give you the headlines and then we'll reflect on those two. So minority calls for broader consultation on domestic debt exchange program, and Bolga Regional Hospital appeals for dialysis center. Both stories on the front page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. I wonder though, because the picture of Haruna Idrisu should have been with the minority calling, but it's rather close to the Bolga Regional Hospital calling for a dialysis center. But the story I want us to focus on in the Ghanaian Times: government extends domestic debt exchange a deadline. And the government has extended the deadline for the debt exchange program to Tuesday, January 31st, to enable it build consensus for the program. The Ministry of Finance, in a tweet yesterday, said building consensus was key to a successful economic recovery for Ghana. Also, the ministry in a press statement said, quote, the government has structured the domestic debt exchange program as a voluntary exercise in order to shield domestic bondholders. We will, however, use this period to further engage with stakeholders, especially individual bondholders, to mitigate any adverse impacts while we all contribute to overcoming our economic challenges. On the back of what you've seen, the domestic debt exchange, the groupings that have come together, Martin Kpebu representing some of them, Senyor Hosi coming and speaking forcefully, people are being told, don't sign up to this. I've heard the Association of Banks in Ghana saying, don't sign up for this, among others. The majority leader himself has said that this could wipe out the middle class. What is your quick take on the domestic debt exchange and how it's been handled?
It is said that no government responds to silence. So the noise, the agitations by individual bondholders are a step in the right direction, and this has yielded the first fruit relative to the extension of the deadline for bondholders to sign up to this program. It is sad that the narrative in respect of the bond exchange program has been inconsistent at best and mendacious at worst. Inconsistent in the sense that we're told that there will be no haircut for individual bondholders. And here we are. They are being forced to undergo haircuts. And this has a tendency to sentence many bondholders to penury or circumstances, economic circumstances, which will not augur well for the well-being, especially the oldest among them. It is instructive to note that the decision for the finance ministry underlined the need for consensus in order to achieve economic recovery, and this was not done in the first place. So the whole program can be likened to putting the cart before the horse, and if they have realized the need to build consensus, so be it. So we appeal to all sides to try as much as possible to arrive at a consensus which will inure to the benefit of this nation. The national interest should be supreme in all this. This is a time for all of us to subject our individual interest to the supreme national interest. Right. We found ourselves at a precipice, and this is the time for all of us to come together to pull ourselves from the precipice, economic precipice, which faces all of us.
Let's wrap with these stories after these. We're done, but I just wanted to share this briefly. Fire kills cop and family. A police sergeant, his wife, and their 4-month-old baby have been killed by a ferocious fire at Apromase near Kumasi in the Ashanti region. The deceased have been identified as Sergeant Owusu Asante Befi, aged 35, Ya Achan, the mother, and their 4-month-old child, whose name is not known. The couple and their baby were said to be asleep in their apartment around 12:50 a.m. yesterday when the fire started. That story on page 6 of the Daily Guide newspaper. But just for our reflection as you leave us, Graphic Business this morning reports domestic debt exchange program on the back of what we've been talking about. Banks suffer 65 billion Ghana cedi losses. Story on page 6. And it says banks' exposure to the ongoing debt restructuring exercise is estimated to be well over 65 billion Ghana cedis, though government says it has made available a 15 billion Ghana cedi fund to ensure financial sector stability. I was talking to you earlier about the banks saying that people should not, the association saying that people should not sign up for the debt exchange. Inflation is set to gallop this month. It will continue for a few months, though it will be slowing down. And the cedi is under pressure. Debt exchange uncertainty bites hard. Quick reflections, maybe some 30 seconds, and we can call this a review.
No one person is a repository of wisdom. No
Right.
one institution is a repository of wisdom. No one political party is a repository of wisdom. So all this reinforces the need for a national conversation on our present situation. How do we come out of the present situation? How do we secure the future economically and financially for our people? And I believe this call will go louder and louder. And it behoves the authorities to give a listening ear to this call, so that we'll bring together experts in this field and would harvest the ideas and synergize our effort to come out of this crisis. Because otherwise, it will spell a doom for all of us. What is happening has no historical resonance with 1983, when everything was in short supply, even including toilet roll and even basic necessities like soap. But again, we cannot dismiss the fact that we are in a very dire economic situation. The cost of living crisis is bitterly bitter and getting more bitterly bitter.
Right.
Our economic crisis is becoming hellishly difficult. So there's a need for all of us, especially expert people who have the expertise in this area. This is the time for them to bring about their ideas without seeking to score any political point. This is the time for all of us to harvest what we ought to do.
Right.
And we need to distill the best from these ideas to move us forward.
Mr. Moni, thank you so much for joining the conversation this morning. Afil Moni is a former president of the Ghana Journalists Association. Sports is coming up next, but before we get into that, the Daily Dispatch this morning, Michael Quay on Ghana's 1992 elections. Check out details on page 3. There's also National Cathedral Board responds to allegations. MPP's Boache Jacko pays tribute to Colonel retired Akpalu, who saved his life 30 years ago. And confusion engulfs NDC in Greater Accra region. Of course, we've been talking about that situation with the chairman and the secretary for the region. I'll just end with this. In our live stream, I saw your message, Paulus in Kaswa. You say, today marks another year in my life, and I am so thankful to God for life and strength. Paulus, we celebrate you. We thank God for another year added to what you already have. On that note, let's settle for sports up next.
Hello, welcome to AM Sports. I am Muftahu Nabila Abdullah. After a poor start to Ghana's campaign in the ongoing Shan tournament in Algeria, coach of the team, Anowoka, has assured Ghanaians of his players' readiness for the crucial clash against Sudan on a Thursday. Ghana lost their opener after suffering a 2-1 loss at the hands of debutants Madagascar on Sunday. It is now a make-or-break tie in the second group match against Sudan. Walker believes his side will rise up to the occasion.
They were not a better side than we do. Seriously, they were even afraid of us from the way their coach spoke at the pre-match. I realized he is even afraid of us. But because we did not play the way we normally play, that caused us and people saw they were better or they played better than we do. But if you correct, you can see from this second half, we were better off than them. Just that we could not take our chances and squandered the chances also that came on our way. So we were better than them. If you were to be here, you see the attitude and the reaction of my players. They were very down, not, but by losing the game, they are all down and they are worried and they did not understand why they should lose a match against no other team than Madagascar. We just finished a meeting together with them. The technical and the players had a meeting, and in fact I have to ask them some questions which they answered. And I could see how serious they are, how ready they are for the Thursday's game, because they know if they don't win or they are not able to win on Thursday, then it will be a blow for them and they will disappoint the whole Ghanaians. So they are ready. The attitude is going to be different on Thursday.
To the Ghana Premier League, and Asante Kotoko have extended their winless run to 4 matches after playing out a 1-1 stalemate against Bibiani Gold Stars. It was an opportunity missed to go level in points with league leaders, Ediana Stars, as they now trail them by 2 points.
Yeah, and just when they were building momentum, trying to create an opportunity.
It's now an opportunity. Dese Mokwala rounds up goalkeeper Joba. Goal number 1. The Porcupines are in the lead.
This is dazzling. Amazing goal from the Ugandan. It was Gold Stars who were probing, and when Kotoko got onto the ball, 1-2 quick passing, and Richard Boadu with the pass. And just when Emperor Da Costa slipped, he knows here he can run the goalkeeper. Did very well, strong in that play, and yeah, they have nothing to lose. The BNI Gold Stars. All they need to do is put the back line of Kotoko under pressure.
There was a push there. Yes, handball situation clearly indicated by the referee Franklin.
Wait, the referee Akumate from the throw in here. Since the law was just going in, I just can't see the handball. The throw in from Udai, the header from La, and here, yes, yes.
I understand they're very good friends too. Here he goes. 1, 2, 3. Asari saves the day, but couldn't save the second opportunity. Headed on by La, through the middle, player goes down, and it's a penalty.
La with a flick on header. Jenfi racing for the ball. Yeah,
his chances from the penalty spot. Asari has got it right once again. This time he pushed it out of play for a corner kick.
Yeah, this is why he has been Kotoko's best player in the last 7 matches. Super stop. It's a Superman save from the young goalie. Another poor penalty because he has seen it all.
Well, in this contest between Asante Kotoko and Bibiani Gold Stars, there were people who thronged to the Bibiani Gold Stars Stadium, which is called Den Park to watch that contest. However, in many league centers, patronage of Ghana Premier League continues to be on the low. Our colleagues at Insura FM started a campaign dubbed Field GPL Centers. Chairman of the Ghana League Clubs Association, Kuje Fiano, who held a meeting with the Ministry of Youth and Sports and other stakeholders within the game to ensure that fans patronize Ghana football, says that it is important everyone within the football industry contributes to the success of the country's domestic football.
If we can pick a player and make him the local artist, or make a player the local kudus, give them that prominence, people will want to go and see them. You see? So it should be a concerted effort. We should all, if we want, this is a topic that we this period cannot contain. I played in Pando, Ashgold. We played in Pando and beat Heart of Lions 2-0. Whilst we were driving out of the stadium, I first saw a gentleman who signaled our bus to stop. We stopped. They boarded the bus and they said, look, we are Kotoko supporters living in Pando. The mere fact that you've come from Obuasi to discipline this troublesome club for us, take this for transport, for refreshment. You can imagine if it were Kotoko. So the interest is there. Let us reach out to them. You are coming to Pando to play. Get your circle in Pando to be involved in the match organization. They will continue and come to the stadium. So that is key. This management and supporters leadership relationship, we need to work on it. If we work on it, the results are there for all of us to get. Let us get the, we can build a Shamokwesi locally. We can build a Joe Debres locally. You still go to the stadium, and as he said, the talents are there. Let us give about quarter the time we spend on these foreign guys. Suarez, he says he will not come to Ghana because he's afraid of his life. But we spend time trumpeting him. Look at the mileage you gave him before Ghana played Uruguay. As if he was the only player who was coming to meet Ghana. You see, so a concerted effort. The media, I will continue to plead with you. We are in together. And if we give this project the necessary push, we'll get our people at the stadium.
We are in this together, and everyone has a role to ensure that people patronize Ghana football. Let's do some transfer news concerning some Ghanaian players. Midfielder Elijah Owusu, who played the just ended FIFA World Cup, which took place in Qatar, has completed a move to French side AJ Oxer from Belgian side Gent. The defensive midfielder signed a 2.5-year deal with a newly promoted side, which will see him to be at a club until 2025. He returns to France, having left in 2019 to join Gent from Lyon. And also, Black Stars winger Kamaldeen Suleiman is open to leaving Stade Rennes in the ongoing January transfer window. The 20-year-old has seen his minutes reduced drastically this season after slipping down the pecking order the last couple of months. The winger is, however, not short of suitors, with Everton reportedly exploring a loan deal with a clause to make the move permanent in the summer. Oxford and Bournemouth have also inquired about the availability of Suleiman, and the situation, which appears to be a bit desperate, could see him leave this month to seek regular game time elsewhere. Let's sign out with some interesting stuff from the athletics field. And General Secretary of the Ghana Athletics Association, he has been appointed as the Chief Executive Officer of the Confederation of Africa Athletics Region 2. That's your AM Sports for now, but we do have some more sports stories on myjoyonline.com. We appreciate your company with us this morning.
Welcome back on the AM show. And you know we do this together. Bernice Abubeidu, Lansah, and I. A very good morning to you, Bernice.
Good morning, Benjamin, and good morning to you. Thank you for joining our
Your
program this
curry-colored outfit with your green and gold brooch and your swagalicious watch.
You're mischievous here. So mischievous.
I see the debt exchange has not hit. It hasn't hit you. The majority leader says it could wipe out the middle class, and that was telling. But let's get into that conversation. Our very first big story. It has to do with the debt exchange program. And well, government says it is extending the deadline to the end of January the 31st to be specific. The minority is saying, scrap it all together, let it go. You remember the discourse on the e-levy and how it went and how government maneuvered its way. The question is, can they do same this time around? Well, joining us for that conversation, we have some stalwarts from the economic and finance space and legal space as well. Martin Kpebu is a lawyer and he is representing a caucus of those individual bondholders. We also have Joe Jackson, Director of Strategy and Business Operations at Daylex Finance, joining the conversation. Let's start the conversation from the legal end. Martin Kpebu joins the conversation. Mr. Kpebu, I think it's only fitting to start by saying Happy New Year to you, sir.
Many, many happy returns, Ben.
And it's good to...
Many happy returns. We hope for the best for this year, even though it doesn't look like it's going to be a very good year because the statistics are grim and the projections are very tight. But let's see.
Well, at least we can be optimistic. Let's wait and see. Just today, I was looking at the graphic business. Banks to suffer a 65 billion Ghana cedi loss, cedi under pressure, inflation still to go up. But minimum...
Tariffs gone up.
Tariffs have gone up, 20-something% for electricity, 8.3 or so % for water. But let's see how we maneuver our way. We also have Joe Jackson from Daylex Finance joining us via the phone lines. Mr. Jackson, Happy New Year. Good morning to you.
A happy and a prosperous New Year.
Thank you for joining the conversation. Let's start with Mr. Kpebu on what has been happening so far. I found it curious the other day when you spoke about the debt exchange and mentioned that, look, typically, like we say in our local parlance, Bernice, in other words, if your neighbor's beard is on fire, you get water and put it by your side. You read that piece from what the program has and indicated that even those with treasury bills could be affected. So break it down for us. What is your standpoint in terms of the debt exchange program, the caucus you're representing? Why are you still lagging behind in accepting the program?
Great. Okay. So, Mr. Akakpo, the thing is that, you see, the program is, in respect of the individual bondholders, it's actually not necessary. We don't need to rope in individual bondholders in order to have a successful IMF program. Not at all. Look, we're saying that if you look in the budget, and then one other preliminary fact, what we've done is that the groups are coming together. So the association, that's Individual Bondholders Association, that's a group I'm leading, and the one senior Hosi is leading the forum, that's Individual Bondholders Forum. We've merged so that we can present one unified front. Good. So for practical purposes now, we're working together. Good. So we're saying that it's unnecessary to pull in individual bondholders because if you look at the economic consequences that this program is going to impact on these individuals, you just find that it's not worth it at all. We'll come into those details. Now, so why don't we have to add them? If you look in the budget, you find lots of money. Let's start. The budget says that we'll spend 27 billion on capital expenditure. So one of our main arguments is that spending 27 billion on capital expenditure means that the recurrent expenditure is sorted. That's the one to pay government salaries, run all the government offices, the public officers pay their salaries, etc. That's sorted. So if that is sorted, then pay individual bondholders too before you go to capital expenditure. Because for the individual bondholders, the coupons, the interest that are usually paid periodically, 6 months, etc., that is also salary to us. So I'm sure we've made the point several times over that individual bondholders rely on the coupon to live. The coupons give us a living. Why? Because that is what we use in paying rent, school fees, medications, etc., etc. So the bond program the government is proposing, this domestic debt exchange, will totally wipe us out. And you see, you actually mentioned it, that Osechi Mensah said it will wipe out the middle class. Why? Because this year, under the proposed program, not even 1 cedi of interest will be paid. Not even 1 cedi for your packet, not even one will be paid this year. And so how are we going to live? How are we going to pay the bills? And then for next year, they propose to pay 5% interest, just 5%. When the coupons usually have about 20%, there's 19.5%, 16.5%, and so on and so forth. So if you ask somebody to bring in his bond, to take one that he will not get 1 cedi this year by way of interest, and then for next year, get just 5% interest. And then number 3, the maturity date for the bonds are being extended up to 2033 and 2038. Naturally, a rational human being will not take it, especially where there is a lot of money in the budget.
I get the point you're making, and no one would want not to get the interest on their hard-earned money, so to speak. But let's assume some of these people have earned profits on their deposits for quite a while. Making these sacrifices, as some people have hinted, wouldn't break the bank. Some have said that, look, it's a hit that we're all taking to save our country, to save Ghana, especially as we go for an IMF program. If we're not debt sustainable, we cannot get the program. And the likes of Gabi Otridako have hinted that, look, if we don't do this, the consequences could be worse. All of what you have, these bonds, could actually be worthless. How do you react to that?
Look, you know, you see, I'm at a loss for words. I don't even know how to begin. Look, you see, Gabi's statement, let me put it very mildly this way. That statement shouldn't be coming from Gabi. You see, sometimes you look at the messenger, who should carry the message. Gabi should be the last person to carry that message. Because, you see, Gabi has been a huge beneficiary of this administration. He has made tons of cash. So Gabi is not the right person.
Do you have evidence to that effect? I mean, do you have evidence to that effect?
Oh, the evidence is out there. Did you see PDS? His firm was acting for government. He was paid hundreds of thousands, wasn't he? That's just a tip of the iceberg. You see, Gabi won't even be happy that Mr. Akakpo, you'll be asking more questions for that to say more. He'll be like, oh, Ben, you're spoiling my case. So maybe Gabi will be content for us to just say that he's made lots of money without going to detail.
I think he would also want me to be fair to him.
Coming from Gabi,
and not let you go get away with that without probing further, which is why I'm asking the questions. And if you know anything, of course, I mean, well, you would have to put it out there.
Yeah. Yes, Mr. Akakpo. So I mentioned PDS, where the documents are publicly available. You see his law firm in there. And they made a tidy sum. I'll just leave it at that. I don't need to. There are certain things in law, we call them res ipsa. I'm sure viewers will be like, hey, Mr. Akakpo, this devil's advocate here, just abandon it. So you let me leave it at the PDS matter. Just move on. So for somebody who made that money, at least from the PDS, when he comes to deliver such a message, it rather increases the anger. It enrages people because they're like, wow, you are making money and you are asking us to starve. So you see that he's not the right person to send such a message. I think in future, it will be better he doesn't comment on these matters like this. Yes, it will just be better.
Okay,
right.
so
and Mr. Akakpo, you remember I mentioned that
Please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Hello. Yeah, you remember, and one of the questions you started with, look, this situation is not as bad as government is making it look like. And that's how come I found a statement in the bond program that they may even extend it to treasury bills. Very arrogant. It's just as if we can't read. So it's like to say that this domestic debt exchange does not extend to treasury bills, but they will come to treasury, they may come from time to time. It's as if we cannot read, we can't analyze for ourselves. Why? What's going wrong? What will happen if Ghana doesn't do much infrastructure projects this year? People have to live first before they think about more roads and more schools. If the situation is that dire, what you do, according to Article 36, is that secure livelihoods first. Secure livelihoods first before you say you want to build more roads, you want to build other infrastructure. So it's showing that government lacks priority, can't prioritize what we need. But Article 36 of the Constitution says no.
Right.
Do it in this manner. By all means, we should develop. But when we are developing, we should make, so what will be, there's a better welfare than making sure that people who are owed money and which money they use to pay their bills should be paid to them. So Article 36(1) says we should have maximum development, but make sure that there is maximum welfare, there is freedom, happiness, and government should secure the livelihoods of the people. So that is the point. So once we rely on the coupons to be able to make a living, it doesn't lie in the mouth of government to take away these coupons just in the name of going to spend 27 billion on capital expenditure. No, and everybody said it, even apart from the economists, the what do you call it, the experts, it's clear to us as ordinary people that government has to cut down expenditure. Government has to cut. Government just has to cut expenditure. You don't even need the economic professor, Professor Peter Corte, Bobkin, and all those people to come and say, "Oh, we are human. We all can understand."
So that's an interesting point you make. Let me quickly bring in. Just hold for me, Mr. Kwebu. Let me bring in Joe Jackson, Director of Strategy and Business Operations at Daylex Finance, and just taking off from where Mr. Kwebu left off. He says we should rein in spending, and you would see that per what documentation you put out there from the 2023 budget. I'm just going to your Twitter page. You look at what January to December we're expected to spend in this year, and we're looking at expenditure of 205.4 billion. Yet you look at total revenue and grants, 144 billion, leaving a deficit of 61.4 billion. It would appear that we are not cutting our coat according to our cloth. You look at that, the deficit for 2022, 58.7. We are even going higher. You look at the deficit for 2022, January to September, comparatively, and it appears that we're still not reining our borrowing in, our debt in. Maybe not borrowing because we've been cut out of the market. Add that to the fact that the Ghana Association of Bankers is directing commercial banks not to sign on to the amended debt exchange offer. What can you tell us about the debt exchange situation, and is government getting it right, Mr. Jackson?
Thank you, sir. Listen, for starters, the biggest problem we have now is that the government is not cutting expenditure. Like Martin is saying, and Martin, hello, good morning and good to hear from you. Martin is saying this morning, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to be able to say to the government, why are you not cutting expenditure? Because for so long as you don't cut expenditure, it's very hard to go out there and tell an individual, like a bank, or to take the losses. It's almost as if the pain has to be borne by everybody else except those who are benefiting from this government. That's ridiculous. That's absolutely ridiculous. And you can see that that particular reference you're making on my Twitter page is Get real. Let's be real. The government owes. The government cannot pay, not in full and on time like it's signed up for. First of all, you negotiate. You show you are contrite. You cut expenditure. And then you go on and say, I've done all I can. Let's sit down and negotiate how you can also contribute to this problem. But you can't sit the same way, borrow another 61 billion. And bear in mind, right, that even as we speak, each week the government is borrowing. And because it is so desperate and all it can do is borrow from treasury bills, the treasury bill rate is going higher and higher and higher. We are now at effective rate of 38% per annum. Where are we going? And if there's anything that we must do at this moment is take an act to that expenditure. Take an act to the expenditure. We are not living within our means. It doesn't make sense. We are not being real. We are tied to pet projects that don't make sense. Especially in a looming economic meltdown. Do we need a debt exchange program? Yes, we do. Our government has borrowed in our name more than it can. Should individuals bear the brunt? That's the question we should be asking. Should corporates bear the brunt? That's the question we should be asking. But whatever it is, you can't say, present a program and say, take it or leave it. You just can't do that, especially when you have not cut things to the bone. You know, it's almost as if we are caught between, we are caught in a situation where the powers that be, they don't hear the rest of us. The powers that be only hear themselves. And as much as all of us, and I'm the first to raise my hand and say, not getting debt sustainability is going to be a dire situation. Yet I'm saying we have to negotiate our way to what is required.
Right.
We have to agree on how the bill is going to be paid and who is going to pay the bill.
Right. And that is the thorny, situation we find ourselves in. That's the bone of contention. But you would also admit that government has postponed the deadline from last year into this year. It's postponed again to the end of the month, supposedly to dialogue on some of these issues. But I'd like your reaction to the Ghana Association of Banks saying or directing banks, commercial banks, not to sign on to the amended debt exchange program. What does that mean if the Association of Banks itself is coming out to say this? We've heard from Senor Hosi and his group saying individual bondholders and others don't sign on to it. But for the Association of Banks to do this, what are the implications on the debt exchange program?
Well, first of all, you have to remember that the Association of Banks has an interest in keeping this country stable and did not take that decision lightly. There are men of integrity at the helm of affairs. What you're saying is that, effectively, that this is going to bring chaos to the financial sector and that there's not enough clarity about the stability fund that is supposed to help mitigate the effects. And also the government is not cutting expenditure enough. You can't expect the financial sector to bear the brunt of events of the pain when you are not reining in your spending. And you see, there's even a credibility gap here. This is a government where we've been screaming for years. Reduce the size of government. Reduce your appointees. Reduce the size of government, and we've said it over and over and over again, and it just falls on deaf ears. The question is, why? How can you sell this austerity, this pain, to sections of the public when you yourself seem adamant that you don't want to take any pain? The Association of Banks just says that, no, this is too much pain, and it's going to create chaos and devastate the financial sector, and you've got to look at it again. Remember also that each time the government has engaged, it's because it was forced to the table. Until the individual individual bondholders formed groups, had anybody engaged with them? No. Even as we speak, has there been any engagement? Martin is here. Martin can tell us. So the challenge we have is, you're saying that an individual bondholder should contribute to paying the bill. Okay. Have you sat down with them, or a section of them, or with some representative or some leader to say, this is what is happening, and this is what you want to do, and what do you also want in exchange, or how best can we structure this? No, the program was presented. Am I surprised that it's been postponed again? No, because there was no consultation. And remember, in all this, we are also all clear that you cannot force somebody to fight. You know, all you can do is to threaten hellfire and damnation when there's an economic meltdown. But you cannot say, I should fight. There's no legal basis for this. You can only appeal, you can only beg, you can only negotiate. And yet somehow that's not what we're seeing, and that's the problem.
We've been joined now by Dr. Theo Champon, political risk analyst. But before I come to you, there was a question on my mind for Lawyer Akakpo, and Mr. Joe Jackson threw that in during his submission. Mr. Akakpo, government has cited further engagement with individual and institutional investors as a reason for the extension of its deadline. Have you been contacted in any way? And are you meeting government anytime soon?
Yeah. Good morning, Bernice. Good to see you. You look good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So, Bernice, we haven't been contacted yet. We are hoping that should be done in the coming days, so that we can get this done and over with very soon. Because, you know, the more these delays, the more it gives us a lot of stress. People can't sleep. People need their money quickly to, you know, be able to buy medication, to be able to pay school fees. So we need to do this real quick. The government has to be faster than it currently is. Kukwasa game has stopped, because these are livelihoods that are being impacted. You see what I keep saying, Bernice? These guys have made tons of money, so they don't feel our pain, and they are being slow, extremely slow. Government needs to put its act together and quicken the pace, because lives are being impacted.
Mr. Akakpo, let me bring in Dr. Theo Champon now. So this is where we are. From an extension of a deadline to the 16th of January, there's been another extension to the 31st. From what we've gleaned so far, government is yet to contact these bondholders. And one would have expected that at least there would have been some conversation even before the announcement of the deadline. The individual bondholders appear adamant. I'm not sure that they are willing to compromise at any point, even if they will. And obviously, the pensions are out of the way now. What are the options for government? What can it do to achieve its aim of getting our debt at a sustainable level so that we can get the IMF deal?
I mean, good morning. The first thing is the whole process has been badly managed and mangled from the start. when the government, because or true of its quote unquote, I know it all attitude, attempted to force this restructuring exercise on the various categories of investors or bondholders without first properly consulting them, and made the whole thing look like take it or leave it. And of course, like Martin and Joe have said, these are people's livelihoods that are at stake here. So naturally, there would be a pushback, and we've seen a strong pushback against this domestic debt restructuring. Remember that this is the fourth extension we're talking about here. And I don't even think that that is going to be the end. I think even the government will struggle to meet the 31st January deadline, largely because you now have like entrenched positions on these issues. And I think the extent of the cuts that we're talking about here, between 60 and 80% implied haircuts on people's savings, it's quite dire, because originally they were going to exchange this for just 4 separate instruments. Now we're talking about 12 instruments going as far as 2038, when some of these people would have been long dead and gone. And so, look, there are really serious issues at stake here. I think what the government ought to do is to go back to the drawing board, right, as part of the consultations. The first thing is that the 55% debt to GDP ratio that they want to attain by 2028 is just not possible. It's too drastic a cut, and that is going to impose heavy losses on various categories of investors. So it's to see if we can actually push that number a little bit rather outward. So what I mean by that is that we're not talking about 55% debt to GDP in 2028 or in the next 4 or 5 years, but rather maybe we're talking about 2032, almost like a 10-year program. And what that entails is you need to sit down with all categories of stakeholders, including the main opposition, the NDC, because there's no guarantee that this government would maybe be the one that will be in charge of the economy in the next, couple of years. And you need that broad buy-in as part of that engagement process. So the two really point I'm making here is that, one, the deadlines are likely to be extended again because they wouldn't get the 80% to so uptake. Number two, the 55%, the aggressive ceilings that they want to attain, perhaps they need to go back to the IMF and think about extending it further, maybe by about 10 years. And what that naturally implies is that you need to have all the stakeholders, including the main opposition, at the table to buy in and say, look, this is what, as a country, collectively, we are going to do for the next 10 years to rebuild this economy back. Other than that, I don't see any way out. And that is further going to add to more uncertainty with the economy.
Pebu, yesterday, we heard you on the news speaking to the government chair, trying to get him to speak on your behalf for government to exclude individual bondholders from this. The finance minister says, look, we want to engage further with all stakeholders. At this point, what is your stance? Are you willing to compromise at any point for anything? Or just like the pensioners and the pension fund managers and owners or subscribers, it's a no-no for you?
Yes, Bernice, the last one is an absolute no, 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 because we've already suffered enough. You remember in 2022, through the finance minister's mismanagement of the economy, our CD plummeted. We are also suffering the cost of living crisis. Food prices more than doubled, etc. So we are all burden sharing, and so that is sufficient. Another reason we say no, no, no is that, as a result of the depreciation and other factors, right now as we speak, research shows that we've lost between 50 and 80% of the value of these bonds. Yes, Bernice, between 50 and 80% of the value of these bonds have been wiped off. So what again does the finance minister want? You see? So the finance minister forgets that maybe because he's made hundreds of millions, and this one, Bernice, you know, it's also public record, through Data Bank, which is significantly owned by the finance minister and his friends, they have made money from every borrowing, from every loan we have taken, these bonds. So finance minister, his friends, and President Kufuor's family are now the rich guys in town. So it actually lies ill in the mouth of the finance minister to continue to say we have to sacrifice. Maybe the starting point will be for them to return the commissions and all the money they've made off the bonds. Then people will be willing to sacrifice. But for as long as finance minister and President Kufuor and their family keep the hundreds of millions of cedis they've made from the bonds, no, there's no way anybody will sacrifice any further. We can't be in a crater. They've pushed us into this deep crater, and they are now the rich guys in town, and they want to kill us further. No. Bernice, like I said before, it's not as if we enjoy saying that we should be left, we should be exempted. That's not it. It's not just for the fun of it. As I explained earlier, the coupons are actually our salaries. The coupons, that's the interest payments that are made, are what we depend on to live. That is what we use to pay the bills, school fees, food, rent, etc., etc., right? So it's not as if we just save the money for the sake of saving. No, without this money, millions of our fellow citizens, we are going to die. More businesses are going to collapse. You know, look, Bernice, the situation is dire. It's really horrendous. So that's how come I find it shocking that the finance minister is still, digging in his heels, and they are saying we should come and negotiate. Look, all this, they're just prolonging our pain and killing more people.
The lawyer, there's no point of you meeting government then. If your stance is no, there's no point of engagement for you, is there?
Well, because they've said we should come, by all means, we have to go there and repeat the arguments. Yes, we have to go there and repeat it, because if we don't go, it will be easier for them to say, oh, you never turned up. So we'll go there and repeat the argument. As I said, the strategy they are using is just a non-starter. They should just cut our pain, and government should also cut its losses by just announcing a reversal. Don't take us through any more pain than we've already suffered. People are dying. Look, Bernice, this thing is really killing people, eh? No, you should see our WhatsApp groups on the individual bondholders WhatsApp groups. People can't sleep. People are getting palpitations.
Martin, I have a quick interjection for you. So the pensioners cried foul and they were taken off. Now, individual bondholders, you're saying we can't stomach this. If you're taking off, where does government go? Where should government go?
Excellent, Mr. Akakpo. It's all in the budget. It's all in the budget. Like the way we say, book no lie. Thankfully, the budget is a public document. So in the budget, you find that we intend to spend 27 billion on capital expenditure. That's more roads, more other infrastructure projects. That is what we are saying we should cut down. Mr. Akakpo, last year, we spent 15 billion on capital expenditure. Yes, 1.5. So what would be wrong if this year we spend the same 1.5? What would be wrong? But as you've seen, if you look at the budget, this year we intend to spend more than last year. You see why total expenditure is going to 205 billion? And you see that last year, domestic revenue, right? So the taxes, aid and grants, we got 65 billion. This year, we are projecting to raise 143 billion. We should be able to pay. We should be able to pay. And let me add this. For two of the bonds, they actually have a constant stream of income. So it's not as if government is now going to find money from elsewhere to come and pay. No. The Dachi bond and the ESLA bonds were designed in such a way that there's a constant stream of income. So for the ESLA bond, that income is the energy sector levy. every liter of petrol or diesel or the other fuels you buy, there is an energy sector levy that you pay. And so that is what is used to be able to retire those bonds. So, Mr. Akakpo, as we talk now, there are people at the filling stations buying fuel. Tomorrow, people will buy. Next month, people will buy, and so on and so forth. So it tells you that that money has not yet arrived, right? So if the government has not made that money, how can you say that money that has not yet come into the kitty, you've already spent it? It's as if we can't read. It's an insult to our intelligence. Then you go to the Dachi bond. That one too, we pay taxes to be able to retire it. That's the get fund tax, the 2.5% for education. That was what was used to design that bond. So that as we buy items that have VAT on them, the VAT, that component, the 2.5 is gathered and used to retire that bond. So you see that government statement that if we don't do this domestic debt exchange, the economy will collapse. At least it's totally false when it comes to the individual bondholders. It's false.
Okay.
Mr. Akakpo,
right.
Article 36, let's read Article 36, secure livelihoods. Secure livelihoods before capital expenditure. That's what the Constitution requires of us. We can't run away.
Dr. Theo Champong, so, I mean, this comes down to real people and the impact this is going to have on individuals and their families. As we speak now, from the 1st of February, there's going to be an increment in utility tariffs, okay? We've heard from the IMF talk about what this year is going to look like for many economies, predicting recession and all that. Here we are, we find ourselves in a fix. Government needs to ensure that our debt is sustainable so that we can get a deal. Government was hoping to do that by first quarter of 2023. From the way things are looking, it doesn't look good. We've heard from the director of ISEL who says, look, even the current form of the debt exchange will collapse many banks, and that is not a good sign for our economy. So where do we go from here? Government is in a fix. Like Lawyer Pibu suggested, cut down expenditure, cut down your projects and other monies you're hoping to spend on projects and all that. What should be the posturing of government, and how soon should they make a decision on this, seeing all the background that I have set, especially for how this year is going to look like on the economic front?
The posturing of a government in a crisis should one that tries to communicate the extent of the mess, one, tries to burden share, two, and tries to carry the people along in the process. It shouldn't be one that makes it look as though you either take what I have on the table or not. And that is what we have been seeing all throughout. And it shouldn't also be one that attempts to make it look as though there is even no crisis, at all. And you're very right. The issues we're talking about here are extremely consequential, not only for the banks or the financial institutions, because clearly, if the proposed debt exchange program goes ahead in its current form, some of the institutions may not survive. And I choose my words very carefully here. But it also impacts households and individuals, just like Martin has explained. So what the government ought to do is to be magnanimous in its communication, but also to go back to the fundamentals, i.e. the budget that they had actually put out there. And here maybe, Martin, a little bit of a correction. In terms of the revenue numbers, last year, we actually got a little over 100 billion, not 60. But that's beside the point. The main point is that the government says that
talking about the domestic taxes. The domestic taxes, we raised 65. Yeah, 65. I'm talking about domestic tax, a constant one.
That's fine. But the government wants to increase the total revenues and grants by about 49% this year, from that 100 to 144. At the same time, they want to increase expenditure by 130, or from 137 to 205 billion. That's about 51% increase. And this is where I support the core. And in fact, some of us have been leading this call for about 2-3 years now, for the government to cut back on some of the, non-priority expenditure in the budget. Because in a crisis, you need to show that you are also doing your bit. A lot of the
Dr. Champong, quick intervention. What are some of those non-priority areas that we could safely cut off and save the country some cost in terms of what we are seeing?
So let's take the line or the expenditure line items one by one, right? If you take the interest expense, that one is something we have to service, and even this year they made a provision for that of about 50-something billion. But then you also have a lot of state-owned enterprises. Some of them, in fact, have been loss-making for several years now, right? You do have some of them with 2-3 deputies and the likes. Take the Office of Government Machinery and all the institutions underneath them. In fact, for some of them, even their budget lines compared to 2019, compared to 2020, and compared to last year, is actually gone up, right, on a year-on-year basis. So there are specific line items on the expenditure side of the equation that I think we can actually deal with. A number of the so-called flagship initiatives and interventions can further be realigned. We've talked about the capital expenditure budget, where we're looking to increase from 15-16 billion to about 27 billion amidst the crisis. I mean, that's a no-brainer in my view. You need to stick within the numbers and the budget lines that you think you can realistically meet. And that's where I think that the answer to this is to go back and rework the numbers in terms of the budget. Because even from where I sit, I don't see us meeting a number of the targets in the 2023 budget. And that could even add further pressure on the already dire state of affairs. But it's all about government posturing in this instance, and that's where the whole sort of I know it all attitude or approach, they need to tone down a little bit, and they need to constructively engage Ghanaians. But the last point, and this goes back to what I started with in my first remarks, is that the aggressive the cuts that we're expecting to bring the debt numbers down to 55% of GDP by 2028 is just not going to be possible in the current form. So we'll have to go back to the table and think about maybe 60, maybe 65, thereabouts, and that then creates a bit of breathing room for the people or the domestic debt holders that are agitating. And remember that, again, we have not even talked about the external debt restructuring in this instance, which is also another complicated exercise on its own. So ultimately, from where I sit, I don't think those first quarter February sort of dates that some people in government are talking about getting the fund program going is likely to be met. It's going to be slightly further down the line.
Let me come to the studio and Dr. I almost
Mr. Joe Jackson.
Joe Jackson has joined us.
I think we could award him
an honorary
for God and country.
I mean, just looking at the front page of the graphic business, and you just get disheartened by what you read on it. So banks suffer 65 billion CD losses, CD under pressure, debt exchange uncertainty bites hard, inflation to gallop this month. Mr. Jackson, should government just consider scrapping this whole debt exchange program altogether? And what are the options of getting us to a level where we can reach the IMF due? Because clearly, from the bit of it,
is that even a possibility though,
yes.
to scrap this?
It altogether.
Is it a possibility?
Look at that? Because it appears, like you said, you were not surprised about the extension, the pensioners and the fund managers for the pension schemes managed to get government to change its mind. Now it's looking like the bondholders are also going to, individual bondholders are also going to get what they want. They don't want to be a part of this. What are the options for government? Should we be looking at totally just forgetting about this whole debt exchange program? And what else can we do?
Okay. For starters, we can't forget about the debt exchange program. Simply because when you look, if you start from the premise that we can't pay our bills and that we should start cutting cost, then what are the two biggest single line items we have? One is salaries, and the other is the servicing of our debt. Now, the whole point of the debt exchange program is to negotiate and bring that bill, the interest on our debt, into a place where it starts to make sense and we can. So you need some relief. That is what we're going to try and do with the external debtors, and that is in theory what we're trying to do with the domestic debt. The challenge though you have is you can't on one hand come to me and say, effectively, I should give up some of my revenue. I should give up some of my liquidity.
Which is basically what they're asking people to do.
Exactly. If you, listen, if think about it in two ways. If this year my bond is maturing, you are spreading it until 2033. 10 years from now, before you pay. You pay in bits and pieces when I was going to get the money in bulk this year. To make it worse, this year you're paying zilch, zero. So you are causing me a lot of pain. Now, I don't want to get to the emotional part about people dying, about drugs, and sometimes it does color the argument, but there are real people and there are real issues behind it. But put that one aside. Whatever it is, someone who gave you his money legally is being told that he's not getting it and he's taking a lot of pain. That's why the banks are here. The banks are not saying that, the banks are saying that what you're doing is going to cost me losses.
In fact, the Ghana Association of Bankers is calling on people not to sign onto the
think about it,
this
right?
agreement.
Think about it. As an institution, you will say, okay, this year I'm going to have these bills due. And I have put aside some money by planning in a bond that will mature this year. I'll get the money and I'll pay. You're not going to get that money.
But Joe, the lawyer Mati Pebu, who represents the coalition, is saying that they're not willing to compromise. It's a no-no for them. And the bankers are also saying, look, don't do this. So what can government do? And that's why I was asking, the debt exchange program, if we still go that route.
Yes, but let's look at it this way. You have to reduce the cost of servicing your debt, right? Mm-hmm. But you have to take the pain first. The problem is this, that the person who can't pay, who is saying take some pain, is spending more, is borrowing more.
And that's where the devil is.
And that's
what we're pointing out, because we're spending some 61 billion Ghana
Thank you.
In excess.
And we're spending more on infrastructure. Now, the issue is that, and let's bear this in mind. In theory, the money was borrowed for the whole of Ghana. It was sovereign debt. It was not an individual's debt. Every time that borrowing happened, Parliament approved. Now, we could, of course, argue this ad infinitum, but that's not the point. So now sometimes the question comes that, shouldn't we have a say in how this debt restructuring is going to be? Shouldn't we have a say in who bears which part of the pain? Why is it that up until now, it was really the corporates who are bearing the brunt? And the corporates in the financial sector. Is it because you could browbeat them and they have a regulator and they have a stake in the financial system, so you could hold a big... then you tried, the pensioners came and said, if you include the pension funds, I will lose money. And then you go back and then...
Take them off.
Take them off.
Now individual...
And now you, of course, because you are determined to cut it down to a certain level, You now rope in individual bond makers and make a few tweaks. Individual bond makers too say, why should I? The question we have is that, who pays the bill? It is not about whether
because the bill must be paid.
The bill
Someone must
be
pay,
paid.
but who will pay it?
But who will pay? That's the question we have. And what has happened until now is that somebody has presented a list of those to pay without their consent, without our consent. I mean, think about it. Parliament, who is our representative, Parliament says they know nothing about the debt exchange program. And this comes from the leadership of Parliament. Right? We've interrogated people from the National Development Planning Commission. They also say they don't know. So the question is, there's a major bill to be paid. Because don't be mistaken. Whatever money is saved is a tax from those who lent money to the government to the government. It's a tax. The government owes, can't pay, and it says, you pay. Your bank pay. You are an individual bondholder, pay. Pensioners, you are off the hook. XYZ is off the hook.
The pensioners had to fight for that. So it gives the impression that if you push...
And that is why the initial stance of the individual bondholders is that no, because they've seen it happen, that if you threaten enough, there's some movement. This should be an opportunity to engage, and engage well. And not just engage on the domestic debt program, engage on the alternatives, on cutting debt. You see, the domestic debt program, we can model it and say is going to save us this amount of money per year over the next 15 years. Right? This is the whole point. First of all, do we need to save even that amount of money? Two, that bill that must be paid, who should pay it? It's a national conversation because it's a national problem, right? But it must happen quick.
Okay, so we have limited time. We're wrapping up the conversation, but I'd like to start off with you, with your wrap-up comments, even as Bernice shares hers with you as well. With all of you, Martin, Theo Echampong, and you. Dr. Theo Echampong said that, that it's likely would have an extension of the deadline. At least he shared his thoughts. Do you agree? In terms of the Paris Club, our creditors, there's been no movement there in terms of whether they are going to forgive us any of our debt. What should we expect? Realistically in that regard. And finally, is the IMF program at risk?
Okay, let me start from the easiest one. The IMF program is at risk. The IMF program requires debt sustainability. The way we are approaching debt sustainability now is not going anywhere fast. So in as much as the program was predicated on a domestic debt exchange program, we are at risk. That is clear. The next question is that, the next issue is that I truly believe there are lots of things being done in the background with our foreign debt holders and on debt forgiveness. But everybody is eyeing what we are doing locally. And so this impasse will have an effect. Because you see, you can't, one of the things that we are demonstrating is that we can't manage our affairs. And we can't be held to commitments we've made. And that we make commitments without consulting the constituencies who will be impacted by the commitment. So everybody is looking at this. All right? So a simple answer is the IMF program is at risk, in as much as this domestic debt exchange program was written into the staff level agreement. It's different if it wasn't in there. We are quite clear that it was in there. So the IMF program is at risk because the domestic debt exchange has hit an impasse. Look around you. In other countries, right, this sort of dragging on could take place for even almost a year. Now the doomsday scenario is that we go to a full impact. The IMF says Ghana is not making any movement to meeting its constitution's precedent, and then we start getting cut off from the external markets because we have no money. That is a doomsday scenario, right? Because bear in mind that even as we sit, the next step is that the government will even declare that it cannot meet its 2023 bond payments. So that there's a default, and that's been threatened all over. So even where pensioners are looking at, and so are saying, this is the coupon, the next thing is that the government has already declared, I can't pay foreigners. If we continue, it could say, I can't pay because you don't have the money, you don't have the money. We've got to fix this. So, in wrap up, please, the powers that be, come off your high horses, cut expenditure, and engage with the parties that you want to take the pain.
Your final words, Lawyer Akakpo, even as we wrap up.
Hello, Martin.
Do we have... Please, kindly unmute, sir.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, Bernice. Yes, what's the question, please?
I was asking you, I mean, at this point, you say you're yet to engage with government. Joe Jackson is saying that, look, our IMF program is at risk. You say you don't want to compromise. So, I mean, what is it? Your final words as we wrap up this conversation. What are you looking forward to?
Good. Bernice, what we can do in law, you know, it's still a process in the IMF. So government can go sit down with the IMF and re-look at it, all right, so that they can adjust. Because we've shown that as for individual bondholders, they can't participate in this debt exchange, no. And so this is not the first time. I mean, you sign an agreement, and thankfully it's the staff level agreement. It's not yet been approved by the board, so they can tweak it. It happens all the time. You can agree something today, tomorrow you see that you made a huge mistake, you talk to the other party. Let's not forget, the IMF is also in business. The IMF is also in business. The money is not coming for free. We will be paying interest on it. The IMF also needs us to stay in business. The IMF needs Ghana to succeed so that we'll continue to be a model and continue to be a beacon for the sub-region. So there are some geopolitical considerations that maybe time will not allow us to analyze here. So the point is that, no. Yes, we'll call it a risk, but it doesn't mean the program will go off totally, right? Yes, so government, they know what they're doing. There are a lot of the stuff we can't talk about on radio and TV because when you do, you kind of, you scuttle the program a bit. But what I'm saying is that ultimately, there are a lot of geopolitical considerations in these negotiations. It's not just numbers. IMF needs Ghana to succeed, to continue to be a beacon in this area. You heard what the American embassy said. The ambassador said they were going to put in a word that we must succeed. So that tells you it's not just about numbers. It's a lot more complex than that, all right? So no fears at all. When we take out individual bondholders, it's not that ultimately the program will not succeed. It will. So government just needs to go back to them, and then they would, you know, do some horse trading and do other deals. And at the end of the day, everything will come out perfect. That's how it's always worked. Trust me. The IMF is a business. They are not Father Christmas. They know how to do it in such a way that everybody benefits.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. Lawyer Martin Akakpo there. He speaks for the coalition, and now we are told that they've come together, what he was leading and what Senior Hosi was. So they are now one body, and they are hopefully going to meet government and tell government it's their position of not engaging in a debt exchange program. We also had Dr. Theo Champong and Joe Jackson. We've been having this conversation, quite an interesting one. But what... You're excited by what you just saw? Well, I am. And Ghana's economic growth has not created adequate number of jobs for the growing labor force. So the youth, who make up more than a third of the country's population, lack education and skills. Well, this morning I've been joined by Dr. Kojo Esim Mensah Abrampa. He's Director General of the National Development Planning Commission to have a conversation about precision quality and what it really means. And it's interesting to know that he himself is a product of vocational training, right?
Technical university.
Technical. You went to technical university. What exactly did you study?
I read development planning, and this was in the University of Dortmund in Germany, and it's now one of the biggest technical universities in Europe, concentrating more on technical skills, issues related to mechanical engineering, architecture, planning, and then more of robotics. This is what the specialization of this university is. And it's actually the biggest training institution for planners in Europe. And it is not just going to learn book and then come back, but it sets you on a practical work. I did my PhD there for 4 years, and in the 4 years, the theories that you read is yours. But it's a real practical work you get on the ground. There are problems in Europe which you are assigned to solve with your professor. Problems in Dorset, which has to be regeneration of a whole new town. You deal with rural, I remember we did a huge work on rural communication over there, very practical and sponsored by the EU and led by my professor. So you go through all these skills from one program to another, one program to another. The reading and the theory is a matter of getting back to the classroom and having a discussion with your professor. But the real thing is the work on the ground. And beside that, you're also writing your thesis for which you're going to defend at the end of the day. And it has to be a practical work. And mine coincided at the time that we were going through the poverty reduction program. So we're just about to start, let me say that, because I completed in 1999. And we're just about to start the Ghana Poverty Reduction Project. So the focus was on how do we resolve this issue of poverty in the country. And that time IMF, again, was around and all that. So my task was to assess, given all that we've done from 1983 to then, 1999, what have we attained as a country? And going forward, what can we do in resolving the issue of poverty? So this was a key thing. And it wasn't just, a theory. I had to come down to Ghana, stay here for 6 months, dealt with, issues in the urban areas, in the rural areas, set up a set of data to go and do the analysis and defend my thesis in a very practical way. And I'm very proud. A lot of the things I said, some 20 years now, are really happening. Really, really happening. I predicted certain parts and certain alternatives that we should be able to work on as a country if we want to develop. If we don't do that, there are consequences. And I see it happening. And just last week, I gave a copy of the book, which it was published. It's soon in Amazon. So, yes, I gave a copy to somebody to read, and the person came back very surprised. And he said, well, you don't need to be, a God person to be a prophet, though I am. But it was based upon the data and the trends, which really gave that. So that is key. Learning is not just a matter of knowledge, but a knowledge that can be applied. And that is key. And that is what they give to you at the university over there in Germany.
That's very interesting. And the fact that in 1999 you were able to predict things that could happen as far off as 2023, and they're happening. That tells you the power and the impact of knowledge and applying it practically. But tell us exactly what this national policy framework on precision quality is about.
This is important in the sense that I am so excited about it because it came from a private sector observation and a private sector, I call it a trigger. Because I was in my office when this lady, who is the champion of this precision quality, Constance, came to my office, and that's the Design Technology Institute, the head. And then she came with a problem, that she's seen a problem, and I think that one of the ways to respond to the issue of unemployment is to make sure that we have the necessary skills, and we have people who can come out with quality things that we can sell. And I looked at it in a very, what is academic sense. What happened that we haven't been able to succeed with our industrialization? And as the document indicated, we started way back from Nkrumah's time. And in Nkrumah's time, you remember that we had all the industry set up because we had a capital. we had a lot of the knowledge of people who can manage these industries, but we lacked certain things. The real people with the skills who can do the nitty-gritty related to these industries wasn't that available. Again, we also had the problem of accessing the market. And then again, we had the problem of producing the raw materials on a consistent basis. So although we had the factories, we did not have the full ingredient to ensure that the chain works. And because of that, it was affected. A lot of them were producing far below the expected capacity, and eventually they had to go down. Eventually, the private sector started developing. So we now have a different private sector, not like in the 60s. A private sector which is responsive and prepared to take risk, and they have a lot of experience. But then, where are the skills? The skills that we have are more of the ones that have gone through what I call the grammarian process. Technology and skills and knowledge that drives technology in terms of your knowledge, the skills and ability is quite different. Different in the sense that people would like to take you and put you on, and from day one, you need to exhibit that knowledge through applying it. And that is where the challenge is. So now that we have those two areas resolved, we need to look at our skill level. The good thing is that what discussion I had with the lady is that in responding to these skills, you're also responding to one of the major problems we have, unemployment, particularly with the youth, because it creates more opportunities for them. That is the cycle that we need to create. We have a National Development Planning Commission put on the theory that, look, if we want to develop, then we need to look at how our primary sector, that is the raw material that we have here, a lot of them, all the minerals, gold, diamond, manganese, lithium, and the new ones that they are discovering almost every day, oil and all that, together with our cocoa, rubber, and all these traditional things, can be linked to our industrial process. Because what we do now is to produce them in the raw form and export them out. And then when we export them, the things that we need, we buy them. So our primary
value has been placed.
Exactly. So the primary sector is growing. The service sector is growing because we're trading. But the industrial sector is not responding to these growth triggers.
Let's break it down for the ordinary person. Yes. What is precision quality, briefly?
Precision quality is basically producing things that are based upon the needs of the industrial sector, so the market. And they said that you can link three things. The standards are the same. So if I buy this pen from one shop and it's the same pen, I will have the same service that it offers. And then it is also linked up with the training. So the standards are linked up with the training. The training in such a way that, because to produce those standards on a consistent basis, you also need to have certain skills that you need to exhibit. And then again, it is also linked up to the market. You are producing things for the market which is there. The industry produces things and it's for the market, and the market needs this quality. Again, there's a dimension which is very important that we need to look at. It's not just like training people to have the skill, but training people who also have the soft skills to be able to relate to customers, to be able to use your cognitive knowledge to make decisions at any given time. You see, I always ask myself, and that is one thing I experienced when I came back to this country after studies. I realized that I had wooden door, which termites were eating it, so I had to change it. So I went to the market with a carpenter. Okay, let's look for a door. And then we bought one of these Turkish doors. We went to my house, and then fixing it became a problem. Because then it meant that we need to cut part of the concrete. So I asked the guy, okay, that is wrong. Maybe we bought the wrong side. So what is the standard door size in the country? And come and see. He was fumbling. Because there are so many masons and carpenters who are dealing with these things, but they don't even know that there are required sizes which goes with these doors.
Right.
So, for instance, let me give another example. One of the advantages we have in Ghana is produce a lot of these aluminium products. And there is somebody who is interested in importing window frames made of aluminium to Nigeria. Then he says, okay, so that's good. We need to do these frames, yes. But for what size? Do we have a standard window in Ghana? Do we have a standard door, double door, 1.5, all those things? Do people who are working on this, do they know? So that is key. So that is one area which my good professor, the Ghana Standards Authority, we have worked on that, establishing standards for all this, because it is these standards which helps us to work. Let me ask you, what is the size that we wear? I know in Ghana, they tailor measures and then they sew. Is it large? Is it medium? Is it extra large? Whatever it is, they sew it for you. If you ask the same tailor, in fact, I have 4 of these, sewn by the same tailor. But when I wear it,
they feel different.
They are all different. They feel
yes.
different on me.
You get that all the time. I had to return a consignment because same person, same seamstress, but different sizes.
Exactly. So that is what precision quality is going for. Predictable, the same quality, the same standard exhibited, and then also it makes it easier for marketing. And that is it.
You've given us the relevance of this to our development as a country.
Yes.
But look within the SAP region. We have AFTA here now, which is a good sign for us as Ghana. But do you think that we have positioned ourselves well enough to, benefit from this whole precision quality concept within the space regional demarcation that we find ourselves?
Wonderful. Let me say that I mentioned that one of the challenges we faced in our first industrialization effort had to do with the market, because we were constrained in terms of consumption level. Now we have 1 billion people to meet instead of just the 30 million that we have in the country. 1 billion, 1.2 billion to serve, which means that the market is there created by African Continental Free Trade Area. But the challenge is that everybody is sizing up to identify the areas where they have the competitive and comparative advantage and specialize so that they can take advantage of that market. People are also going to develop more complex taste, because now it's not only the Ghana market. If I don't want your product, I can go to another country. And so competition is there. Comparative advantage must be taken care of. But your ability to enter this market depends on the quality of the product.
And you think we've not done enough?
I do not think we're there yet. And I know that the AFTA Secretariat, the Ministry of Trade and Agriculture, all of them are pulling together. And that's one of the essence of this policy. But it is key.
But this policy, I mean, it's a good thing it's being created now. But what do you think has been the challenge in creating a policy like this? We could have done it all this while, because people like yourself and other experts who've experienced what it's like outside Ghana know that this could help in solving the problem. Why haven't we been able to do this all these years?
It's very interesting that in Ghana, the softer things are the most difficult. Because there, you need to deal with people, coordination. Coordination in Ghana, you're not just talking to institutions, you're talking to people who must ascribe, and you need to influence and convince them. And we have a situation where just a change of a person from a position to another could affect the whole discussions. And so we've gone through these iterations several times. This is not the first time. But we're fortunate this time we've gone very far.
I'm happy you brought in that, because my challenge, like I said, this is an exciting concept, but my challenge is, would we be able to sustain this policy? Because we know how it is in this country. The change of a government, the change of a certain minister could just lead all of us onto another path. So what's the guarantee that this is going to succeed?
The good thing is that we've gone beyond the individual conviction. We've gone to the institutional conviction. So now it has been institutionalized. Given that the persons that we started it, even though they might not be there, it will still be in the institution. So the first leg we've been able to go over. Now it rests with the institutions that we are working together with. The CTVET, the Ghana Standards Authority, the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, the Ministry of Trade and Industry, the National Development Planning Commission itself, and Ministry of Education. So it's real multiple role. It's multifaceted, interdisciplinary, and therefore putting this team together has been the challenge. Now we're there. We've been able to develop a draft of roles, responsibilities for each institution, and what you need to do to be part of this whole complementary action to drive this precision quality.
So
one of the areas which I would like to add is able to penetrate the tertiary institutions.
Okay, because I was going to ask you in the practical sense, how would this policy be run? How would it be executed?
Great. So what we've done so far on the pilot basis is to bring the industry, the trainers, the standards, together.
Okay.
So the industry defines the private sector and the public sector what they need in terms of the product and in terms of the people. The second area has to do with the kind of skills that ought to be provided by these training institutions. So we've had the pilot cases of Whole Technical University, Takoradi Technical University, where we've run this over a period, thanks to DTI and the support we got from MasterCard, to be able to run this on a practical basis. And they did an experiment, interesting experiment, which formed the basis of one of these, the policy strand. Students who were introduced to the precision quality technique and students who were not over the period. And you see quite a big difference. The emphasis on not only the technical aspects, but also on the softer skills, which are required together with the process. How do you deal with your customers? How do you respond to time and prompt basis?
Right.
How do you also make sure that where you work is attractive? How do you make sure that you avoid waste as much as possible? So they go through all this training. Others go through the traditional, the other group went through the traditional process, and you could see a big difference.
Right.
So at least we've established a basis in terms of training and justification for it in the Takoradi Technical University and Whole Technical University. That's the first part. The second part is key, and that is the standardization. And the Ghana Standard Authority has gone through a whole stream. We've observed the work at Timber Market, the work at Magazine, the work at all those places to observe how they work and be able to identify and the things that they need, the standard. Because if you want to come out with a door which is quite solid, there's a certain material that you need. And the material must be of a certain quality. Because so all these aluminum sheets and all so they've standardized this in many places, in food processing, in hair, in design, in metal work and all this. So all these things have been done in a very practical way. So developing the policy is not being developed from a vacuum or conceptually, but on a practical basis.
Finally, Doc, what would you like to say to political parties, policymakers, businesses, about how we can all join forces to ensure that this is successful and we have a good implementation or run of our national policy framework on precision quality? Briefly.
Great. Let me say that attaining the industrialization process is not a magic. It's a process, and we need to get systems working. Precision quality is only one of the processes and the systems for which we're establishing a pillar that links up, demand from the industry with standards, with training, and also with the market. Once this is linked, it provides a good system for which we can take up the industrialization process. And I tell you that given all the resources that we have, if we're able to link that up with an industrial and manufacturing process, we are there. So long as our primary products are exported in the raw form, our manufacturing industrial process will not work. And I think that if I bring it up to the political realm, one of the things which is catching up with us is the 1D, 1F, and it's key. It's a concept that we can look at and how we can operationalize this, bringing the precision quality process to go through. But the key thing is the standard. If I sew 4 shirts by the same tailor, I must feel the same when I wear it. So long as we don't feel that way, it is a challenge.
Thank you so much for your time here this morning. Dr. Kojo Mensah Brapa is Director General of the National Development Planning Commission. And this morning we've been talking about the National Policy Framework for Precision Quality and why it's important for everybody to get on board. There's economic benefit, there's a benefit on the side of employment, and even for you as a consumer, you get what's worth your money. So it's important that we all get on board. I'm sure we can find the policy framework on your website. And you can pick a copy, read it, and then let's encourage this innovation. Well, Benjamin Akakpo joins us shortly for our next conversation, and he'll be hosting government spokesperson on governance and security. And there are a lot of issues to discuss. Is a reshuffle imminent? Well, We'll be getting those answers shortly.
Well, here we are back on the beat, and as we wrap the conversation, we talk about governance issues and how this administration has fared. You would recall that two of the key members of this administration have resigned: Agric Minister Dr. Ifeyi Akoto, and of course, before him, Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, who actually was the Minister of Trades and Industry for a second stint, first under the Kufuor regime, now under the Akufo-Addo regime. But what does all of this mean? Is a reshuffle imminent? Well, joining us for this discussion, government's spokesperson on governance and security, Paul Grave Boakye Dankwa, joins us for a conversation. Thank you for joining, as always.
It's good to be here, and Happy New Year to you, Benjamin, and to beautiful viewers around the world.
Happy New Year to you too. First time this year, right?
First time this year.
Actually,
second time.
Yes, I was just about to say, because I think you joined via Zoom or something, but physically, first time. I know you've been out and about, so you've been watching Kakra. Yeah, I think I'll get you there. Speaking governance, though, let's get straight to the pertinent issues. Speaking governance and the reshuffles the resignations that we've seen so far. Two crucial aspects of our national life: agric, trades, and industry. What has that meant to government? Yes, we've had the replacements, Mavis Hawakumsen and Abu Jinapo, as acting ministers. What has this had by way of impact on our governance?
So, Benjamin, a very good morning to you and to your viewers, and really to be able to state that President Nana Danko Akufo-Addo is very confident in his mind to deliver the promises that he has laid out to the Ghanaian people, and also to congratulate and commend these two ministers that have been extremely outstanding in the first term and the second term, the Honorable Minister for Trade, now former Minister for Trade, the Alan Kwadwo Kyerematen, and Ifeyi Akoto, for their desire to seek the highest office of flag bearership for our great new patriotic party come the time, and further on to stand as presidential candidate in the ensuing 2024 general election. We are in no mind in our mind as a government that this is the good time for them to pursue their ambitions. And also, we are in no doubt in our mind that President Nana Danko Akufo-Addo will find very suitable replacements for both of them in their service to the Ghanaian people. I have seen that President Nana Danko Akufo-Addo has been extremely confident with the ministers and appointees that he has worked with and has seen their deliverables.
Right.
And I see that the consistency with keeping ministers at one place really brings fruits and results.
So you're speaking,
as opposed
you're speaking
regular,
pretty much against the tide of what people have said. That
I speak
there
for the
should be
government.
reshuffles. Look, from Kufuor, even from Rawlings to Kufuor to Mills to Mahama, the reshuffles were
different governance styles.
Civil society organizations have pointed to it, academics have pointed to it, governance experts have pointed to it.
There are different governance styles.
And now you're here saying
there
that
are different governance styles around the world, and various models. But you would see that when you keep an individual at one place, you're able to get the fruits and the results in terms of the implementation of your vision.
our instance,
no doubt. I'm very much certain. No doubt in my mind that at the very right time, the President Nana Danko Akufo-Addo would do his reshuffle as people are expecting. No doubt that at the very right time, the President would do that. But at this stage, as we speak, you are aware that government has bigger issues to deal with. Government is looking into infrastructural ways. Government is looking into debt restructuring. Government is looking into IMF agreeing on a bond that we have decided to go for, close to about $3 billion US dollars that we are requesting from the IMF. In this time, government is looking into ensuring that the Ghanaian people are cushioned up
with the highest level of struggles that are around the world. In this time, government is looking to having a goal for oil, which has come in now. Government is not blinded to all the issues as well at all. But I mean, we are confident in our appointees, and I'm certain that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, in his wisdom and leadership at the right time, will do what the Ghanaian people would expect.
Is a reshuffle imminent? How soon should we expect a reshuffle? We've seen so many, I'm sure you've seen them as well, floating around, surfacing, talking about replacements here and there that the education minister, interestingly, is going to be let go of, that some other ministries are going, in fact, the caretaker ministries are going to get new appointments like Tahiro Hammond, Katie Hammond, and others in there. In fact, your name has been mentioned, that you are soon going to be a deputy Minister of Information also. So is a reshuffle imminent? And if you were thrust into any such capacity, would you accept it?
Well, continuous service is good for people.
Paul Grave, if you were thrust into any such capacity, if you were called to service, to serve as a deputy minister or a minister, would you take it?
It's always an opportunity to serve the leadership of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. I will not turn down such an offer at all.
Have you been approached?
Well, Benjamin,
have you been approached? I mean, this is sometimes we make it appear. Have you been approached?
Benjamin, these names that have come out are predictions that the media usually would do.
Media, some of them are sourcing, people within the corridors of power, whispering into their ears and telling them what to do.
I just know that the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo would be the final decider on a number of these names that have come.
Yes, he will decide, but he would prompt those he's planning on. He wouldn't make it. You wouldn't be there as Paul Grave, and all of a sudden your name is on a list of that. So have you been approached? Has there been any?
I don't think the issue really is about Paul Grave Boachidankwa. I think the issue is really about the people that the president would want to use as his final lap in his leadership and governance. Really, the last 2 years is very significant for the President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to really cement his legacy. And I believe that whatever team that he decides to work with have a lot of honest responsibility to ensure that the Ghanaian people remember President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo for who he is, for what he stood for what he came to do in this country, and posterity will judge him very rightly for a number of decisions that he has made. And so
I guess posterity will be in the position to do his judgment, not those of us here, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. But which is why I said the final lap of President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo is critical. Right. And it's just like playing a football match. And if you have just about 20 minutes to go and you need to win a match, you need to bring in good players. And I'm certain that the president in his mind will bring in some very good players to make sure that the breaking the AIDS becomes a feasibility.
How soon can we expect this reshuffle?
It's difficult for me to say, to be honest, in my position.
The calls have been there since even the first term, second term, and all of that. So, I mean, people are saying that, especially on the back of the resignations of the big two, Alan Kwadwo-Kyerematen and Dr. Efri Akoto, that it's in the offing. You walk the corridors of power. You are the spokesperson for governance and security.
It is very difficult for me to tell you how soon it's going to happen. But the Ghanaian people were aware that internally the various political parties are preparing to major elections. And so the NDC has had their national elections, has selected their national executives. The MPP took a way leap and ahead to select our own national executives. And we've always been ahead. And in that same manner of going ahead, we are very certain that the Ghanaian people will reward us with our hard work, and we would go ahead of the NDC in the 2024 general election. And so at the party side, people need to prepare. And we have been very aware, the Ghanaian people have been aware that people that are interested in standing for various positions, particularly flag bearership, would have to resign. And the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, even stated that if you are interested in...
Some say they resigned even too late.
Well, I mean, that's in the remit of the people. I mean, I'm not in the minds of the people to make those decisions. But really, all well and good that they have stepped aside to give President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo a lot more clarity on what to do with his team of ministers and appointees to serve in his final term. But I've stated, and I need to put it on record, that the final team that President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo sets up are the people that are going to help really cement his legacy in the footprints of the Ghanaian history. And I'm confident that the President, Danko Akufo-Addo, in no light, will make some very good decisions on who he wants to serve in his team.
Staying with that reshuffle, the President has had his own promises that he's made in respect of Ken Ofori-Atta to his majority caucus in Parliament. I spoke yesterday to your former General Secretary, Nana Hininto, and he said, as far as he was concerned, Ken Ofori-Atta had no business still being at post. In his opinion, he shouldn't even be there. So what can we expect by way of what is coming? The reshuffle, we do not know when it will come, and you've not been very forthcoming with information on that, though I suspect you know a lot more. But will some names have to go? Will some big players fall? Will the likes of Ken Ofori-Atta maybe? I mean, what can we expect, at least? Any hints?
You know, Benjamin, the real essence of reshuffle is that some people will lose their jobs. That's the fact.
I mean, a reshuffle could also mean that people are simply moved around.
Well, I mean, you have two people that have already resigned to seek their personal interests as flag bearership. So the real essence of reshuffle is that yes, some people will be moved around and some people will lose their jobs. It's in the remit of President Danko Akufo-Addo to decide who he wants to serve in his final term and final 2 years. I am in no doubt in my mind that the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta has served this country very well and will continue to serve this country very well. I mean, no doubt in my mind that he's been able to fulfill the mandate that President Danko Akufo-Addo gave to him, especially when he was sworn in. The issues that came against him, that a sizable part of the majority and even the minority asked for his dismissal, has all been resolved. The CD has been stabilized.
Has it?
Well, I mean,
I mean, the issue is
in the contest.
We have a debt exchange program that is in limbo.
In the contest
the
of the
IMF
time.
program is at
In
risk.
the contest of the time.
And let me just give you the latest, because I've been following. Look at where the dollar to CD is today, 10.34. You see the appreciation in the space of the euro is over 11 cedis now. The pound is over 12 cedis.
I do see the appreciation. At the time when they called for the head of the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta, you saw significant impact in the Ghanaian economy and how well, I mean, I don't want to say in record time, but how swiftly government in less than 5 months was able to reach a staff level agreement. I mean, the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta has done extremely well as finance minister.
Is that supposed to be an achievement, though?
Well, there were global challenges. Close to about 100 countries sought for an IMF conversation. Ghana was part of that. You followed all those conversations that happened in Washington and the negotiations that went on. Some countries couldn't survive the various impacts that came against them. But you could see very clearly how our Ghanaian country and how the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta really acquainted himself very well to the much admiration of the Ghanaian people, and the excessive propaganda and mischievous and malicious pacts from the minority did not hold water. And I think that there's not much that they can use to paint the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta bad. I'm confident that the Honorable Ken Ofori-Atta is one of Ghana's best finance ministers, and I'm confident that he would be able to stabilize the various challenges that we have within the Ghanaian economy. You talk about debt restructuring, you could talk about individual bondholders. Our government is a continually listening government, and we would ensure that we listen to the forum that has come to make sure that we agree at a very comfortable place to see that the Ghanaian economy is revived and stabilized. I've looked at various countries that have gone through debt exchange program and how they have been able to sustain their countries, from Mozambique to Greece to Madagascar, number of countries.
None of them, I doubt any of them have had to go down the road we are going in terms of our domestic debt exchange. It is severe, it's excruciating. We've never gone down this road before.
Primarily because of where we find ourselves globally.
Where we put ourselves globally.
Well, you know, there are a lot of exogenous factors as well as internal issues as well. But exogenous factors really would impact a lot more of your internal challenges. And I'm in no doubt. I mean, government has been very forthright with the Ghanaian people. The government has opened up their books to the Ghanaian people to let them know and appreciate. And I've not seen any government that would desire to ensure that our debt to GDP becomes sustainable and we are able to meet up to our debt. We are having bigger negotiations with the Paris Club and a number of clubs to forgive us our debts so that we can be able to move ahead. And
How optimistic are we?
Very, very optimistic.
I mean, just this morning I was interacting with Joe Jackson, among others, Dr. Theo Champong, on exactly that. So moves have been made to the Paris Club.
Very, 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 very optimistic. And I'm certain.
Are we expecting debt forgiveness?
Well, that's the conversation on the table. That's the conversation on the table.
Where in terms of our negotiations with them,
I mean,
is it looking promising?
It is looking very promising. And I'm in no doubt in my mind that a listening government like ours, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, would make sure that we listen to the Ghanaian people. Even in the midst of the challenges that we have, our government has lifted up salaries close to about 30%. I was part of the government negotiation team as of last week.
Do you want us to talk about inflation?
Well, no.
And the other factors?
We've increased SNIT by 25%. I mean, I commend Dr. John Tinkran for his sterling leadership at SNIT and how, as I speak to you today, the highest pensioner will be receiving close to about 169,000.
Yeah, I saw all of that, but you cannot also overlook. I mean, it's a feather in their cap, but if you look at the years of complaints about the paltry sums, you're forgetting to mention those at the bottom who are earning a little over 400 cedis. So I mean, there are dynamics.
Benjamin,
even as we look at both sides, we can always talk about
the interest of making sure that the Ghanaian people become more resilient and more resolved to invest into their future.
Right.
Really.
So point made there. Basically, so the movement of Alan Chamanting and Dr. Free Akoto have not impacted governance.
Oh, not in the manner in which we have been preparing for this, which is why the president swiftly put in caretaker ministers. And we've seen consistently how there has been caretaker ministers, even in the absence of...
I mean, so nothing disastrous?
Not at all.
Okay.
It's just been yesterday, the Honorable Minister for Lands and Natural Resources, Honorable Abu Janapo, went in to pick up handing over notes.
Alan Chamanting posted
very much
on that.
Very much.
Just two quick issues I want us to wrap with in less than 2 minutes. I'm curious. There was an initial, when it comes to the trades ministry, trade and industry, there was an initial communication from the Jubilee House that Kenneth Oyata was going to take over. And then all of a sudden there was a second, letter that spoke about Samuel Abu Janapo, the Minister for Lands and Natural Resources. What happened?
Well, I think that the curiosity is good, but you spoke about governance. And really, trade is part of finance, to be honest. And so at the time when the Minister for Trade resigned, immediately the president needed to make sure that the finance minister really holds affairs before he puts in a caretaker minister, and then finally he would put in a substantive minister. So that was a strategy of government to make sure that the finance minister takes care of the trade ministry in the absence of the minister. Because you remember that when he brought the letter, he stated that he was going to leave on the 16th of January.
Right.
So within that period,
I get the point you're making. Sorry, because of time.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get the point you're making. But why say that, yes, knowing all of these permutations, it's going to be Kenneth Oyata, and all of a sudden,
it's your assumption that all of a sudden. I need to explain to you. You see,
if you come through with an earlier communication that is going to be this person, then another name is seen.
It's a caretaker minister, and caretaker ministers can be changed anytime. I'm explaining.
No, we're not saying they can't.
But
we just want to know.
I'm trying to give the reasoning.
Right.
So the reason is that the Ministry of Finance and Economic Planning absorbs a number of ministries. You are aware that they are the paying ministry. Right. And so it is right for the president to ask the Minister for Finance to go in as caretaker minister. Within that period, I mean, there are a lot of paperwork, finance issues that needed to cross out before the president, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, picks in another caretaker minister who would be responsible after the Honorable Kojo Alan Chamanting goes off, which is the 16th. And so that period was a number of financial conversations. And then Abu Janapo, the Honorable Minister, takes in as caretaker minister from the 16th until the president substantively decides who becomes the finance minister. If you're in government, I might be proposing you as the Minister for Trade, but you're not.
Okay. So just the final point on the cathedral. I'm sure you followed what has happened, the Reverend Kusi Boateng issue, the multiple personalities, and the bit about 2.6 million Ghana cedis. What do you make of it in some 30 seconds? We have to go.
In 30 seconds, I want to state that there are some attempts from the caucus of the Honorable Samuel Okudzato-Ablakwa,
the Member of Parliament.
Member of Parliament.
North Tongue.
A very good friend of mine. In fact, some malicious attempts. And let's put it in context.
Malicious attempts?
Very, very malicious attempts. You know, JNS, it's a private company. They give financial assistance to the cathedral. There are letters to prove that. They transferred 2.6 million Ghana cedis from their ADB account to the National Cathedral account at the time when government had not released a number of their funding that they needed. Through the benevolence of Reverend Kusi Boateng, who sought the...
Alias Kwabna Edu Jemfi.
Well, I am called Pagre Bachidankwa, and my name is Nana Kwame Frimpong. My name is Nana Kwame Frimpong.
You have business dealings in different names.
We can look at those issues, but let's pick it one after the other. So let's look at the money. Okay, the JNS gave financial assistance to the National Cathedral. There's been records to that. I have records of their bank transactions from ADB Bank, JNS account into the National Cathedral account. And so when government gave their resources to them, National Cathedral had to refund the money that was given because it was a financial assistance in that regard. The Supreme Court, there's a ruling on Supreme Court. If you don't mind, I can reference that. The Supreme Court...
We may not have the time.
You may not have the time to go through it. But the Supreme Court really has given a ruling on a name. I mean, and I can reference the case Kofi Sapon versus Franklin Jantua. You can read that suit number J4/15/2015. It says that the trial court also considered that it is not illegal for any person to acquire property in his native name. The Court of Appeal considered this and concluded it is not violent, it does not violate
what you're saying
law,
is,
and it is not criminal.
This is a native name against some other
native name. Yes, I mean, I don't know, Benjamin Akato, do you have a native name? My native name is Nana Kwame Frimpong, and I'm known as Pagre Frimpong Bachidankwa in public circles. So we need to put that in succinct, very clearly, that to disassociate the very revered man of God from a number of these issues.
We're grateful. We've heard from the National Cathedral Secretariat as well. We'll see how that issue pans out. But we're grateful that you took the time to join us once more. Thank you for always heeding our call and joining us.
Anytime, for the good people of this country.
Right. Pogwe Bachidankwa, also known as...
Don't be naughty.
Oh, no. You mentioned that.
No, my home name. My friends call me Nana Kwame.
Okay. Pogwe Bachidankwa, also known as Nana Kwame, helping us wrap the show this morning. Up next, Joy News Desk. Do stay with us.